Chapter 2202. Who is this white-robed man? I feel like he's much more powerful than an emperor. Looking up at the white-clothed expert in the sky, Su Fang was extremely shocked. He couldn't help but feel a sense of insignificance in his heart. He was like a lowly ant that was facing the heavenly Tao at this moment. The golden rainbow monarch spoke from within his body. This person should be the supreme existence of the imperial people. His strength has almost surpassed the limits of an emperor. Only such a powerhouse can use supreme divine abilities to imitate the divine sun and divine moon and recreate the universe. The arrogant golden rainbow monarch's tone was filled with reverence. He didn't even dare to say the white-robed man's name. For a supreme existence like the white-robed man, even if they were separated by countless planes of the divine realm, he would be able to sense it if his name was directly called. He didn't dare to show the slightest disrespect. Otherwise, it would bring about misfortune. The imperial people are indeed worthy of being the supreme divine race that controls the heavenly Tao, Su Fang exclaimed in his heart. He then asked the golden rainbow monarch, "Are there any supreme existences that surpass the emperor level in the heavenly Tao?" Maybe not. Golden rainbow monarch, aren't you talking nonsense? Generally speaking, supreme existences that surpass the emperor level can transcend the universe and go beyond the heavenly Tao from the exalted celestial mountain. They definitely existed in the past. As for now, I'm just a bandit. How would I know? After ending his conversation with the golden rainbow monarch, Su Fang looked up at the supreme existences in the sky. His heart was filled with reverence. This feeling was like a mortal facing a god. However, Su Fang's heart was also filled with a strong belief. One day, I will be like these emperor-level powerhouses and stand at the peak of the heavenly Tao. I can do it in the small world and the great world, so I can do it in the heavenly Tao. There will even be a day when I transcend this world and go beyond the heavenly Tao to take a look. If other geniuses knew about this thought, they would definitely mock and ridicule him. This was Su Fang. Because he had obtained great freedom in his heart, he also had unparalleled confidence. Only by believing in oneself could one reach that step. If one didn't even believe in oneself, how could one surpass others? At this moment, the supreme existence of the imperial people suddenly threw out a divine weapon. The god weapon looked like a fiery star. It slowly rose into the sky and rapidly expanded. In just the time it took an incense stick to burn, it grew from the size of a fist to 100,000 li across. Boom! Crimson flames erupted from the star, releasing thousands of blinding rays of light. It was as if a divine sun had risen into the sky. Pure yang divine power quickly swept out in all directions. Wherever the pure yang divine might went, the deathly aura that filled the air was quickly evaporated into nothingness. The evil sun energy that enveloped the heavens and earth, as well as every cultivator's heart, was suddenly weakened, suppressed, and finally disappeared. The radiance released by the Shaoyang heavenly sun extended between heaven and earth. If one stood high up in the sky, they could see the power of the heavenly sun sweeping in all directions like waves. With the entrance of Yuan Tiangong as the center, it formed a terrifying circle that could almost cover an entire galaxy. In the area covered by the divine power of the Shaoyang heavenly sun, not only was the deathly aura dispelled, but there was also a type of pure yang energy that all life needed to grow. The aura of life was boiling because of it. All the gods, whose strength had been suppressed due to the changes in heaven and earth, seemed to have been unsealed at this moment. Those gods who cultivated the great Tao of fire and the great Tao of pure yang found that not only was their divine essence boiling, but their understanding of the great Tao's laws had also suddenly become much clearer. The imperial people are mighty. Outside the entrance of Yuan Tiangong, there was a burst of loud cheers that sounded like a tsunami. As expected of a supreme existence that has almost surpassed the sovereign level. The divine weapon created can actually release divine power similar to the divine sun. Su Fang was shocked. Then, he felt the yang energy in his body become restless, surging and howling in his yang meridian. The world tree was also trembling crazily, appearing abnormally active. Su Fang didn't hesitate to activate the 9 yang 9 changes, wantonly absorbing the power released by the Shaoyang heavenly sun to break through the 70th meridian and strengthen the world tree. Suddenly, QL11 there was a commotion in the heaven and earth Tao Palace. A wisp of primordial spirit consciousness entered the heaven and earth Tao Palace. It turned out that the dragon bird had become very active after sensing the aura of the Shaoyang heavenly Sunday. It wanted to rush out of Su Fang's heaven and earth Tao Palace. This is a rare opportunity. I'll let you eat to your heart's content. At this moment, the aura emitted by the Shaoyang heavenly sun was incomparably pure yang energy. Although it wasn't as pure as the real heavenly sun, it wasn't mixed with any other natural spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It was incomparably pure. Su Fang absorbed this aura and cultivated the 9 yang 9 changes. Naturally, it was twice the result with half the effort. For the dragon bird, it also had astonishing benefits. Yin alone couldn't grow, and yang alone couldn't grow. If only the Shaoyang heavenly sun was present, it could be used to resist Xieyang. Gods also couldn't cultivate here. Next, the supreme expert of the imperial people would definitely activate the Shaoyang heavenly moon, fusing yin and yang, and then evolve into thousands of things. If he didn't take the opportunity to absorb the aura of the Shaoyang heavenly sun now, he wouldn't have the chance later. Therefore, Su Fang released the dragon bird without any hesitation. Then, he sat down cross-legged and activated the 9 yang 9 changes, absorbing the power of the Shaoyang heavenly sun to break through the 70th yang meridian. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to take out the origin sacred mirror. If the origin sacred mirror absorbed the power of the Shaoyang heavenly sun and turned it into origin yang qi, Su Fang would benefit even more. However, with the supreme divine power of the origin sacred mirror, it was very likely that it would directly absorb the Shaoyang heavenly sun into the ancient mirror space. If that happened, it would cause a lot of trouble. Even Emperor Masters wouldn't be able to protect him. The dragon bird flew to Xuanxin's side and circled around Xuanxin. It seemed very intimate because in its eyes, Xuanxin was its mother. Then, the dragon bird rushed out of the scroll space and flew into the void, wantonly devouring the aura of the Shaoyang heavenly Sunday. Seeing that Su Fang was using the Shaoyang heavenly sun to cultivate and even released a monster that looked like a dragon and a phoenix, the geniuses were all shocked. They never thought that Su Fang could use the Shaoyang heavenly sun to cultivate. Di Yuan snorted coldly, his eyes under his sharp eyebrows showing a look of dissatisfaction. The supreme masters of the imperial people obviously consumed a lot of energy to activate the Shaoyang heavenly Sunday. They sat cross-legged in the air and swallowed pills to recover. When they recovered to their peak state, they then activated the Shaoyang heavenly moon. For such supreme beings, a casual seclusion could last tens of millions of years. At this time, it definitely wouldn't take such a long time to recover, but it definitely wouldn't be a matter of 3 to 5 days. About a month later, Su Fang, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the dragon bird. The dragon bird stopped devouring the power of the Shaoyang heavenly sun and curled up into a ball, its body burning with an astonishing amount of sun essence fire. The dragon bird is going to transform again. Su Fang and Xuanxin sensed it and smiled at each other. They were both very happy. Another 3 months passed. Suddenly, the dragon bird suddenly opened its eyes, and a light like the sun burst out from its eyes, making the surrounding light suddenly dim. Then, the dragon bird stretched its body. It was more than 100 feet long, with a dragon's body, a phoenix's tail, and feathers all over its body, burning with 5-colored flames. The flaming crown on its head emitted a 5-colored halo, looking extremely dazzling. The dragon bird looked down proudly, and an aura of disdain for heaven and earth arose spontaneously. Then, it let out an incomparably loud and clear cry toward the Shaoyang heavenly sun, echoing through the sky. The Shaoyang heavenly sun suddenly more than doubled in brightness, and the power of the sun it emitted also skyrocketed. Other than the supreme masters of the imperial people, the other venerable sovereigns in the sky all looked at the dragon bird. Huh? What kind of mutated divine beast is this? Its cry can actually make the Shaoyang heavenly sun more active and powerful? Increase? If this strange beast grows to a certain height, it will be the nemesis of all evil forces, especially resurrected masters. The dragon bird's cry also surprised the venerable sovereigns. Under everyone's gaze, the dragon bird flew into the inner world of the painting, into Su Fang's body, and into the Tao Palace of heaven and earth. Then, it fell into a deep sleep. The dragon bird has transformed again. I wonder what new abilities it has this time. Su Fang's heart was filled with anticipation. Another half a year passed. Su Fang felt that the 70th Yang meridian that he was trying to break through was about to be formed, but he still needed some time to cultivate. At this time, the white-robed master of the imperial people finished his recovery. He looked down and said majestically, "The Shaoyang heavenly moon is about to rise into the sky. When the sun and the moon merge, a supreme power of creation will be born. This is a supreme opportunity for all of you. As for how much you can gain, it will depend on your own abilities. Do not be greedy and try to be brave." The many gods below, including the giants of the powerful forces and even the master gods, were all excited and eager to give it a try. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. How can we miss such a great opportunity? Xuanxin goddess, let's go. Su Fang transmitted his voice to Xuanxin and goddess Luo, and also flew out. The many Yuan Tiangong geniuses were right above the Yuan Tiangong entrance, where the power of the Shaoyang heavenly sun and the Shaoyang heavenly moon converged. Naturally, they would gain the greatest opportunity. Although the many experts in the outer area could not gain as much as the Yuan Tiangong geniuses, the benefits were still shocking. They all flew up. The white-robed master of the imperial people once again shot out a divine weapon. This divine weapon was like an ice wheel. It flew to 1,000,000 miles away from the Shaoyang heavenly sun and hung high in the sky, releasing a mysterious aura of extreme coldness. Two completely opposite heavenly daos collided with a loud bang. They restrained each other and merged together, forming a shocking divine might that was the fusion of yin and yang. It descended from the sky and surged between the heavens and the earth. The power of the Shaoyang heavenly sun and the Shaoyang heavenly moon were the supreme yang and yin heavenly daos of the world. It was exactly the same as Su Fang's 9 yang power and Xu Wanjin's 9 yin power. However, these two divine weapons were personally created by supreme existences. Although the power they released was not necessarily of a higher level or purer than the 9 yin power and 9 yang power, it was extremely vast and majestic. Chapter 2203. The Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon were the two divine weapons. They released the power of extreme yang and yin, blending yin and yang. At that moment, Su Fang felt as if he was joining forces with Xu Wanjin to perform the yin-yang transformation, but its power was more than 10,000 times more terrifying. The power formed by the blending of yin and yang was also a kind of yin and yang energy. The yin and yang energy was the power of creation, second only to the heavenly way's origin, the chaotic energy. It surpassed the natural spiritual qi and world energy. Absorbing the yin and yang energy would be greatly beneficial to the cultivation of the world tree. The inner world would also undergo a great transformation. For other gods, the power released by the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon was also a supreme creation. That was because no matter what great path one cultivated, it could not be separated from the category of yin and yang. Absorbing the yin and yang energy would not only increase one's cultivation base, but it would also greatly benefit one's understanding of the heavenly way. Countless deities flew into the sky with all their might. That was because the closer they were to the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon, the richer and purer the yin and yang energy would be. Who wouldn't rush to improve their cultivation base? However, the yin and yang energy released by the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon contained an astonishing shackling power. In addition, the yin and yang energy was difficult for gods to control. If it wasn't for the continuous flow of heaven and earth energy from the Yuan Tiangong entrance, they wouldn't even be able to fly, let alone travel through the void. Many Yuan Tiangong geniuses were eager to give it a try. However, Di Yuan didn't move, and the other geniuses didn't dare to move either. Hundreds of experts quickly overtook the geniuses and flew into the sky. Looking at these people, Di Yuan still didn't move, and the corner of his mouth curved into a disdainful smile. Suddenly, the divine body of a peak ninth heaven godly venerable realm expert who was charging at the front suddenly exploded with a bang. Even his sun spirit couldn't escape. The higher one went, the greater the power of creation, and the shackling power formed was also extremely shocking. After absorbing the yin and yang energy into the body, if one couldn't control it and merge it with the divine origin, they would only end up exploding and dying if they lost control. Then, another 3 venerable ones followed closely behind, their bodies exploding as well. The other gods immediately came to their senses. Although the fortune was good, one had to be alive to take it. As a result, everyone became cautious. When they reached the limit of what they could endure, they immediately stopped and sat cross-legged in the air, absorbing the yin and yang energy and fusing it with their divine essence to increase their cultivation. Absorbing the power of yin and yang was also a test of one's overall strength. Other than one's cultivation level, it was also a test of one's cultivation level. From the positions of the deities, one could tell the strength of each of them. A small number of overgods had reached their limits when they were 10,000 kilometers away from the Shaoyang suns and Shaoyin suns. For domain lords, the limit was 100,000 miles. Any further and it would exceed the limit of what they could bear. The rest of the gods were even further away. Those who were below the hierarch realm could not go further than the entrance of Yuan Tiangong. Di Yuan slowly flew into the sky. The other geniuses also followed one after another. Although each and every one of them was impatient in their hearts, no one dared to surpass Di Yuan. Luoyang looked at Su Fang and shouted coldly in a domineering manner, "Su Fang, this young master lost to you during the palace entrance test, and I refuse to accept it. This time, you and I will compete again. Let's see who can reach the highest altitude. Do you dare to accept the challenge?" Fan Shu also shouted loudly, "Su Fang, if you have the ability, then compete with us. Don't always hide behind women." Su Fang smiled faintly and ignored Yi Luoyang and Fan Shu. He said to Xuanxin and Goddess Luo, "Let's go. Let's go up together." The 3 of them flew into the sky side by side. "Su Fang, although this young master lost to you during the palace entrance test, it doesn't mean that my strength is inferior to yours. This time, this young master will let everyone see that your 3rd place was only obtained by relying on women. It's just an undeserved reputation." Luoyang laughed wildly. His figure flashed and shot into the sky like an arrow. Soon, he overtook many geniuses. Fan Shu smiled coldly at Su Fang and flew into the sky. Su Fang, Xuanxin, and Goddess Luo flew side by side at a steady pace. Soon, they were left behind. After 5 minutes, some geniuses couldn't take it anymore. They had to stop and cultivate on the spot. The higher one went, the more opportunities there were. However, it also meant that it would be more difficult and dangerous. Geniuses continued to stop. First, it was the geniuses who were ranked below 10,000. Then, it was the geniuses in the top 1,000. In the end, the geniuses in the top 100 also stopped. Fan Shu was one of them. Only the geniuses in the top 10 and a small number of geniuses in the top 100 continued to fly upward. Su Fang, Xuanxin, and Goddess Luo flew past the geniuses as if they were taking a stroll in the park. This time, Yin Buji held his breath and rushed to where most of the geniuses in the top 1,000 were. Then, he stopped to rest and prepared to continue upwards. Yin Buji may not be in the top 10, but my strength is enough to be in the top 100 of the Yuan Tiangong geniuses. However, my strength was ruined by this lowly ant, Su Fang. This time, I'll definitely soar into the sky and let everyone see. Yin Buji unleashed the power of the great Tao of Yin and Yang. His body suddenly soared. In one breath, he flew more than 10,000 miles and finally reached his limit. Looking around, Yin Buji saw all the geniuses in the top 100. He couldn't help but roar. Who knew QL11? Before he could be happy for long, Su Fang, Xuanxin, and Goddess Luo passed by him and quickly left him behind. Su Fang, Yin Buji's eyes shone with hatred. Then, they dimmed and turned into powerlessness and dispiritedness. Even the patriarch of the Yin tribe personally apologized to Su Fang. How would he dare to provoke Su Fang again? Seeing Su Fang's calm expression, Yin Buji finally realized the difference between him and Su Fang. If he continued to provoke Su Fang, he would be courting death. That genius of the ancient Divine Dragon Clan used the talent of the ancient Divine Dragon Clan and his strong physical body to rush into the top 100. He even surpassed Fan Shu by more than 100 miles. Fan Shu was unconvinced. Just as she was about to catch up with the genius of the ancient Divine Dragon Clan, Su Fang passed by her with his 2 cultivation partners. Su Fang looked back and smiled disdainfully at Fan Shu. Then, he quickly passed the geniuses in the top 100. Damn it, you lowly ant! How dare you laugh at me? Fan Shu was furious. She unleashed her cultivation and rushed up without caring about anything else. After moving up by more than 100 miles, Fan Shu spat out blood. Her divine body started to crack. Even her immortal abode and immortal aperture showed signs of instability. Fan Shu was scared out of her wits. The anger in her heart instantly disappeared. She hurriedly stopped and swallowed pills. As she recovered, she refined the power of Yin and Yang in her body. Suddenly, Fan Shu's body trembled. Her masked face revealed a clear expression of fear and pain. It turned out that when Fan Shu's immortal abode and immortal aperture were being attacked by the power of Yin and Yang, and she was trying her best to stabilize them, her second primordial spirit, which had snuck into her body during the drinking game at the banquet, directly entered the sea of immortal apertures. Fan Shu, the second primordial spirit, suddenly condensed into a figure. Where did you come from? How dare you live in my immortal aperture? Strange. Why does your voice sound so familiar? Fan Shu's young spirit was draped in a golden gauze robe. It looked majestic and domineering. No wonder she was a genius of the ancient divine world. She had a primordial spirit Dharma treasure, and its grade was not low. It was at the peak of the supreme grade. Primordial spirit Dharma treasures were very precious. A supreme grade defensive primordial spirit Dharma treasure was even rarer. The second primordial spirit turned into a lifelike figure of Su Fang. But it looked cold, different from Su Fang. Su Fang. It's you? No, you're not Su Fang. No matter who you are, you'll die if you dare to break into my immortal aperture. This is my world, and I have a supreme-grade primordial spirit Dharma treasure. You can't hurt me at all, and you'll be suppressed by me. Fan Shu shouted domineeringly. Without hesitation, she formed a mudra. A large number of primordial spirits appeared around her young spirit. They gathered into a stormy wave like a roaring sea and crushed toward the second primordial spirit. I spared your life in the palace entrance test, but I didn't expect you to be so crazy and try to harm my family. How can I let you live today? You're such a troublemaker. I should have killed you long ago. The second primordial spirit quickly formed a mudra. A golden sword Qi tore apart Fan Shu's primordial spirit Dharma treasure and fell on her yang spirit. However, the golden gauze robe outside Fan Shu's yang spirit fluttered, releasing endless primordial spirit Dharma treasures sword Qi. You have such a powerful primordial spirit Dharma treasure. But so what? Can you shake my primordial spirit Dharma treasure? Even if you can break my primordial spirit Dharma treasure, you'll alarm the venerable sovereigns of the supreme Sanskrit. It'll be easy to kill you. As long as the venerable sovereigns of my race have something on you, even venerable sovereign Sangqiu won't be able to protect you. Humph, not only you, but your family will also die in my hand. No, that's not enough to vent my anger. I'll turn your family into slaves and your family into prostitutes. Fan Shu laughed complacently. How arrogant. I've already said that you won't have a chance, because you'll soon become a living dead. You're just a clown. Killing you is as easy as killing an ant. The second primordial spirit said coldly. Then she formed a Mudra and used Night Demon's supreme primordial spirit Dharma treasure to control cultivators to attack Fan Shu's yang spirit Dharma treasure. The second primordial spirit's primordial spirit Dharma treasure had surpassed the divine venerable realm and was far more powerful than Fan Shu's. Moreover, she had Night Demon's Dharma treasure, and Fan Shu's divine aperture was in an unstable state. How could she be a match for the second primordial spirit? Although Fan Shu's primordial spirit Dharma treasure was a little troublesome, it was just a little troublesome. Even if she didn't break Fan Shu's primordial spirit Dharma treasure, the power of the charm god soul-sucking seal could penetrate her defense and seize her primordial spirit consciousness. Chapter 2204. Fan Shu's second primordial spirit had successfully taken over her body. However, this was not the end of the matter. The most troublesome part was how to prevent the Sanskrit powerhouses from finding out about Su Fang. The upper echelons of the ancient god world's Brahmin clan, as well as the venerable sovereigns of the Brahmin clan, were all present at the moment. With the strength of the venerable sovereigns, they could easily reverse time or find out the truth from the remnant aura. Once they found out about Su Fang, Sovereign Su Fang would not be able to protect him even if he wanted to. The second primordial spirit merged a wisp of primordial spirit consciousness into Fan Shu's unconscious yang spirit, then quickly left Fan Shu's divine aperture ocean and returned to Su Fang's body. At this time, everyone was focused on the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon in the sky. Even the overgod powerhouses were trying their best to absorb the yin and yang energy, so naturally, no one was paying attention to Fan Shu. The sovereigns of Sanskrit would never have thought that a genius from Sanskrit would be taken over right under his nose. Moreover, as a sovereigns, no matter how bored they were, they would not constantly pay attention to a junior, so they did not notice anything unusual. About the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Fan Shu suddenly looked at the genius of the Divine Dragon clan not far away and roared, "How dare you look down on me, Divine Dragon clan? You're courting death." After that, he charged toward the genius of the Divine Dragon clan. The genius of the Divine Dragon clan was baffled. At this time, the Divine Dragon clan was in decline and could not afford to offend Sanskrit, so he had to swallow his anger and argue loudly, "Master Fan Shu, I didn't even look at you. How did I look down on you? This young master is right in front of you, and you dare to not even look at me? This is the greatest contempt for this young master. See if this young master doesn't suppress you." Fan Shu formed a seal and attacked the genius of the Divine Dragon clan. Some of the nearby geniuses all said that Fan Shu was overbearing, but no one stepped forward to stop him. "Mr. Fan Shu, I've never offended you, and I've always tried to please you, but you turned against me. Don't go too far." The ancient Divine Dragon clan had always been arrogant. Being bullied by Fan Shu in such a domineering manner, the ancient Divine Dragon clan prodigy was furious. He unleashed the ancient Divine Dragon clan's most powerful superpower to fight Fan Shu. However, the prodigy of the ancient divine dragon clan was far weaker than Fan Shu, and Fan Shu seemed to be fighting with her life on the line. The prodigy of the ancient divine dragon clan had no choice but to flee. Di Yuan, this young master will definitely surpass you this time and become the #1 Yuan Tiangong genius. Fan Shu displayed her domineering aura and flew into the sky. His speed was extremely fast, and he quickly surpassed the geniuses ranked in the top 100 and caught up with those ranked in the top 10. This height had already surpassed Fan Shu's limit. Under the tremendous pressure and the terrifying shackles, his divine body was constantly shattering. His divine dwellings and divine apertures were also on the verge of collapse. However, his aura was like a rainbow. At this moment, Fan Shu attracted everyone's attention. Everyone was shocked and looked at Fan Shu in a new light. Even Di Yuan steadied himself and looked down at Fan Shu with raised eyebrows. Fan Shu's performance was obviously far beyond his expectations. The venerable sovereigns in the sky were also alarmed. After discovering that such a dazzling prodigy was from the Sanskrit sect, one of the venerable sovereigns said to the Sanskrit sect's venerable sovereign, "This young man is a Sanskrit prodigy, right? I didn't expect him to be so extraordinary." In terms of strength, compared to Di Yuan, there is still a big gap. However, in terms of courage and Taoist heart, the juniors of my clan are not inferior to anyone. Sanskrit responded humbly. His face was full of smiles, and there was undisguised pride in his eyes. Fan Shu's outstanding performance in front of so many venerable sovereigns naturally made him, the Sanskrit sect's venerable sovereign, proud. Young Master Fan Shu is amazing. The peerless prodigy of our clan will definitely soar into the sky this time and suppress everyone with his peerless brilliance. How could Fan Shu be squeezed out of the top 10 if he wasn't framed by a villain and entered the palace to take the test in Yuan Tiangong? Fan Shu definitely has the strength to be in the top 10, or even the top 5. Many of the higher-ups and experts of Sanskrit were so happy to see Fan Shu's performance that they even forgot to cultivate. They looked at Fan Shu from afar and praised him loudly. Fan Shu seemed to be even more excited. He suddenly sped up and quickly overtook Su Fang to catch up with Luo Xingtian. "Fan Shu, are you crazy? Stop right now or you will die." Luo Xingtian sensed that something was wrong and shouted at Fan Shu. "Luo Xingtian, how dare you humiliate me? Die." Fan Shu pounced on Luo Xingtian like a mad beast. Luo Xingtian's divine light changed instantly and he hurriedly tried to dodge. Suddenly Fan Shu's divine body exploded, and a terrifying energy swept out and hit Luo Xingtian, sending him flying. He was immediately seriously injured and fell down. Everyone was dumbfounded. The Sanskrit people's praise for Fan Shu was still echoing in the air, but everyone had turned into ice statues. Just as Fan Shu's body exploded, life shrinking art, cut off the aura of fate. Heaven's mystery solution, mess up the heaven's mystery solution. Su Fang didn't hesitate to use the life shrinking art and the heaven's mystery solution. The power of the life shrinking art immediately cut off the karma between Su Fang and Fan Shu. The remaining primordial spirit in Fan Shu's divine aperture was also completely wiped out. The power of the heaven's mystery solution messed up the heaven's mystery solution, making it impossible to infer the heaven's mystery solution. Whoosh! A primordial spirit appeared at the spot where Fan Shu exploded. It was the angry Di Zun of Sanskrit. Fan Shu was the top genius of Sanskrit, and now she had died right under the nose of the Di Zun of Sanskrit. One could imagine how shocked and angry he was. He had to get to the bottom of this no matter what. Who is trying to harm the geniuses of my race? No matter who you are, this Di Zun will find you, pull out your tendons and skin you alive. After all, he was a Di Zun. He immediately figured out that something was wrong and roared angrily. Then he reached out and made a grabbing motion in the direction Fan Shu had just passed. Time and space twisted, and the previous scene quickly appeared. From Fan Shu's sudden attack on the genius of the ancient divine dragon clan to her explosion and death, there was nothing unusual about the whole process. If there was anything unusual, it would be Fan Shu's behavior today. First, she attacked the genius of the ancient divine dragon clan, then she attacked Luo Xingtian. Has Fan Shu gone crazy? Impossible. This Di Zun doesn't believe that our genius would go crazy for no reason. The Di Zun of Sanskrit snorted and released a burst of primordial spirit power to sense Fan Shu's remaining aura, trying to find clues from it. How powerful was a Di Zun? After a while, the Di Zun of Sanskrit found some clues from Fan Shu's aura. Sure enough, there's something wrong. The Di Zun of Sanskrit's primordial spirit erupted with a murderous aura. Fortunately, he hadn't lost his mind and suppressed his primordial spirit power to a certain range. Otherwise, apart from the Di Zun, even the overgods in the sky would be affected, let alone the geniuses of the Yuan Tiangong. I don't know if my life-shrinking technique can escape the senses of a Di Zun. Su Fang suddenly became nervous, and a chill seeped from the back of his heart. The Di Zun of Sanskrit carefully sensed, and then made a deduction. He was shocked to find that there was an invisible force in the unseen world that had erased the karma of fate. The heavenly secrets were in chaos, and he couldn't deduce anything at all. It can even block this Di Zun's detection and deduction. Who is this person? The Di Zun of Sanskrit was shocked. The eyes of the primordial spirit shot out an invisible gaze, and he instantly sensed the area around the entrance of the Yuan Tiangong. The result was still disappointing. It must be that brat from the Divine Dragon clan and that brat from the Luo clan. They must have done something. Otherwise, why would Fan Shu attack them? The Di Zun of Sanskrit snorted inexplicably. He grabbed at the air, and an invisible force pulled the genius of the Divine Dragon clan and Luo Xingtian over. Both of them were peerless geniuses of the Yuan Tiangong, but in the face of a Di Zun, they were like weak chickens, unable to resist at all. This Di Zun would like to see what you two did to my clan's genius to cause his death. The Di Zun of Sanskrit was ruthless. He was about to use the power of his primordial spirit to search their souls. Stop! Di Zun, are you trying to start a war between the Di Zun and Luo clans? Two angry roars rang out, and then two figures broke through the air. One of them was an old man in a starry robe. He was a Di Zun expert from the Luo clan. QL11 the other was a middle-aged man in a golden robe. Dragon Qi rolled around his body. Although he was not as strong as a Di Zun expert, he was not far from it. He was the strongest person of the Divine Dragon clan. The Di Zun expert from the Luo clan shouted angrily, Di Zun, your Sanskrit genius went crazy for no reason and attacked my Luo clan's genius. Now you want to search my clan's genius soul? Sanskrit is really overbearing. How dare you search my clan's genius soul? This Di Zun will fight you to the death. The Di Zun expert from the Divine Dragon clan roared, Di Zun, although my clan has declined, we are not pushovers. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. At this moment, the majestic voice of the Di Zun expert in white came from the sky. Di Zun, you've gone too far. The supreme existence of the Di Zun had spoken, and the Sanskrit Di Zun did not dare to fall out with the Luo clan and the Divine Dragon clan, so they could only give up. The Di Zun expert from the Luo clan and the Di Zun expert from the Divine Dragon clan were furious. With a cold snort, they each took Luo Xingtian and the Di Zun expert away. This time, Sanskrit, the Luo clan, and the Divine Dragon clan were at odds with each other. No matter who you are, this Di Zun will find out who you are one day. When that time comes, this Di Zun will make you suffer a fate worse than death. The cold voice of the Sanskrit Di Zun expert reverberated between heaven and earth. Everyone below the Di Zun level trembled in fear. That will have to wait until you find me. Su Fang sneered in his heart. Su Fang had full confidence in the heavenly secret life contraction technique and the heavenly divination unravel. The Tongbao Chamber of Commerce would not leak this information to the Sanskrit Zune expert. Chapter 2205. Fan Shu's identity was quite extraordinary. In terms of cultivation talent and strength, she was ranked in the top 100 among more than 10,000 Yuan Tiangong geniuses, and she was very close to the top 10. But now, she went crazy for no reason and attacked the geniuses of the ancient Divine Dragon Clan and Luo Tianxing. In the end, she exploded and died, almost causing a conflict between the venerable sovereigns. The whole thing was very strange. Many geniuses were shocked, and at the same time, they were wondering who the real culprit was. Yin Buji looked at Su Fang's figure from afar. Although Su Fang looked very calm, Yin Buji, who had suffered a great loss at Su Fang's hands, could guess some clues. Fan Shu's death must have something to do with Su Fang. If the imperial people are informed. Yin Buji's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. But when he thought of Su Fang's methods and the fact that he didn't have any solid evidence, Yin Buji became a little hesitant. After the storm of Fan Shu's death, many geniuses quickly focused their attention on absorbing the power of Yin and Yang to obtain opportunities. Although the imperial people's white-robed master didn't say how long the power released by the fusion of the Shaoyang Divine Sun and the Shaoyin Divine Moon would last, many geniuses knew very well that the venerable sovereigns had spent so much effort to create a star field, so they definitely wouldn't let these geniuses absorb the power of Yin and Yang endlessly. Soon, everyone forgot about Fan Shu's death. Most of the geniuses stopped and sat cross-legged in the air, absorbing the power of Yin and Yang. Only the top 10 geniuses could continue to move forward. There were very few geniuses in the top 100. The top 10 geniuses in the entrance test began to compete with each other. They were no longer competing for opportunities, but for rankings. With so many venerable sovereigns and the supreme existence of the imperial people watching, who wouldn't want to do their best? QL11, even Di Yuan was no exception. He wanted to use his own formidable strength to prove to everyone that not only was he worthy of being number one, he also possessed an absolute advantage that all geniuses looked up to. Luoyang had been kicked out of the top 10 by Su Fang during the palace entrance examination. At this time, he even used all of his skills to prove to everyone that he was a world-shocking talent. Not only did he surpass all of the top 100 geniuses, he even surpassed Shifeng, Qiangang, Geng Zhao, and a few other geniuses who were ranked at the bottom. He formed the second echelon, and there was only one person in the first echelon. Naturally, it was Di Yuan. Su Fang, Xuanxin, and Goddess Luo ran side by side, gradually catching up to the second group. The distance between them and the Shaoyang Godly Sun and Shaoyin Godly Moon was more than 100,000 li. It had already surpassed the Great Domain Lord Realm. Although it was still some distance away from the Domain Lord Realm, it was still beyond the peak hierarch realm. In the second echelon, there was finally someone who couldn't take another step forward and stopped cultivating. Then, it was Shifeng, Qimian, Qiangang, and the others. They reached their limits one after another and stopped on the spot. Being able to reach this height was enough to prove their strength. If they continued, they might follow Fan Shu's footstep. Xuanxin and Su Fang cultivated Yin and Yang dual cultivation. Their bodies already contained the power of Yin and Yang. Therefore, the Yin and Yang power released by the Shaoyang Godly Sun and Shaoyin Godly Moon had a much weaker effect on her compared to the other geniuses. Therefore, Xuanxin was able to keep up with Su Fang's footsteps and surpass Shifeng and the others. Goddess Luo was a monster. The shocking power that shackled the other geniuses didn't hinder her at all. It was as if she had transcended heaven and earth. Even heaven and earth and the universe couldn't shackle her. The height that she could reach in the end was probably not even comparable to Di Yuan. There weren't many geniuses in the top 10 who were close to the Domain Lord Realm. Di Yuan was still far ahead. Behind him were only Tian Bao, Chu Bingyan, and Luoyang. Tian Bao's divine body was incomparably strong, so his performance this time was exceptionally shocking. Chu Bingyan and Yi Luoyang's performances were also stunning due to the techniques and abilities they cultivated. Xuanxin couldn't hold on any longer. Her face turned pale, and her body trembled. Let's stop here. Su Fang hurriedly stopped. Goddess Luo stopped as well. Actually, no matter where they absorbed the power of yin and yang, it didn't make much of a difference to them. As for the ranking, they didn't care. The height that the three of them had reached was close to the Domain Lord realm. They were already considered outstanding. Under the radiance of the Shaoyang godly sun and Shaoyin godly moon, their figures were clearly seen by the many gods below. They exclaimed in surprise. Su Fang, you can't even compare to me. What right do you have to be in the top 10? If you have the guts, compete with me. Yi Luoyang shouted coldly, full of disdain. Su Fang couldn't be bothered with Yi Luoyang. He closed his eyes and began to absorb the power of yin and yang. Yi Luoyang mocked. What, don't you have the guts? Today is enough to prove that your top 10 was only obtained by relying on women. Su Fang chuckled. You make me sound so useless. You're my defeated opponent. Then what are you? Yi Luoyang was instantly speechless. He was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. At this moment, Di Yuan's voice came from the sky. Su Fang, bring out your full strength. Let me see how big the gap is between you and me. Young Master Di Yuan, if you want to show off, that's your problem. I, Su Fang, won't accompany you, Su Fang replied coldly. How could he not understand Di Yuan's intentions? He wanted to use this opportunity to take revenge for losing to Su Fang at the banquet. At this moment, Su Fang could be considered to have seen through it. Di Yuan looked very magnanimous. That was because he had pride in his bones. He didn't take any prodigies seriously. Naturally, it was difficult to anger him. In reality, Di Yuan was very narrow-minded. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He was no different from other prodigies. Su Fang disdained to compare himself with such a person. If he wasn't born in the imperial people and had outstanding talent, it would be impossible for him to reach such heights. Di Yuan looked down at Su Fang. Do you not want to, or do you not dare? Next, an aura of looking down on the world spontaneously rose from Di Yuan. Whether you don't want to or don't dare, you have to compete with me. Otherwise, I'll let the imperial people come forward and propose marriage to the Divine Phoenix clan. Su Fang exploded with a thunderous roar. Di Yuan, how dare you? Su Anxin's eyes instantly froze. An icy aura swept out, and his voice became incomparably sharp. Di Yuan, you're shameless. Goddess Luo shouted angrily. Di Yuan, I thought you were a peerless figure. I didn't expect you to be so despicable. Di Yuan snorted arrogantly. The Divine Phoenix clan took the initiative to propose marriage to my clan. I'm just complying with their request. Why wouldn't I dare? How can I be shameless and despicable? Yi Luoyang took the opportunity to add insult to injury. Su Fang, you can't even protect your Dao companion. What face do you have to live in this world? If Phoenix Su Anxin and Di Yuan become Dao companions, that would be a beautiful story in the entire universe. Ha ha! Di Yuan, you're nothing more than borrowing the power of the imperial people to humiliate me. Since you want to compete with me, then I, Su Fang, will ruthlessly trample you under my feet. A strong sense of humiliation surged in Su Fang's heart. A strong wave of resentment and anger surged into the sky. Then, he slowly stood up. Di Yuan's disdainful eyes were filled with disdain. Yi Luoyang sneered. Su Fang, you can't even compare to me, and you still want to trample Di Yuan under your feet. You're really overestimating yourself. Laughable to the extreme. What a clown. Su Fang frowned and glanced coldly at Yi Luoyang. Su Anxin, you can cultivate here at ease. Watch me vent your anger for you. Su Fang revealed a lofty and domineering aura. The divine might of yin and yang erupted from his body with a bang, and his figure suddenly rose up. After 5 or 6 breaths of time, Su Fang surpassed Chu Bingyan, then Tianbao, and then Yi Luoyang. Yi Luoyang mocked. You're just barely able to keep up with my footstep. You want to surpass young Master Di Yuan? Swoosh! Yi Luoyang erupted with a divine might that tore through the heavens and the earth. His figure was like an arrow, and he instantly tossed Su Fang over 1,000 kilometers away. Whoosh! Su Fang maintained a constant speed as he chased behind. Although he wasn't as fast as Yi Luoyang, he was absolutely not slow. At this moment, Yi Luoyang felt the pressure. He gritted his teeth and erupted with his aura, once again pulling apart the distance between him and Su Fang. Unexpectedly, Su Fang was still unhurried, and he quickly caught up again. Just like this, the time for an incense stick to burn passed. Let's see how you'll surpass me this time. Yi Luoyang erupted with power once more, and he wasn't far from the height that only region lords could reach. This was already Yi Luoyang's limit. His entire body was trembling, and he was practically unable to stabilize his figure. However, his face was filled with arrogance and domineering aura. A God-exalt realm true God was able to reach such heights, and it was sufficient to look down on all geniuses. Su Fang's speed had clearly slowed down greatly, and he seemed to be an arrow at the end of its flight. Yi Luoyang couldn't help but laugh complacently. Su Fang, if it wasn't for your divine ability surpassing mine in the palace entrance test and the woman standing up for you, how could you possibly be ranked in the top 10? Aren't you still beneath my feet now? Su Fang revealed a resolute and ruthless expression. His figure suddenly sped up, and he actually surpassed Yi Luoyang by over 30 m in an instant. However, he staggered and seemed to be on the verge of collapse. The bones and flesh within his body emitted cracking sounds. Obviously, he'd already surpassed his limit. Yi Luoyang, why aren't you laughing? Su Fang glanced at Yi Luoyang with disdain, and then he prepared to sit down cross-legged. Surpass me? Don't even think about it. Yi Luoyang gritted his teeth and erupted with his cultivation, and his figure suddenly shot up 300 m into the air and surpassed Su Fang. Pooh! Yi Luoyang was injured by the force of the shackles, and a mouthful of blood sprayed from his mouth. Yi Luoyang, you can't surpass me, Su Fang. Su Fang shot up into the sky once more, and he just happened to surpass Yi Luoyang by 30 m this time. Crack! 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 The sound of bones cracking resounded from Su Fang's body, and his aura seemed to become chaotic and turbulent. He might lose control at any moment and explode like Fan Shu in the end. However, he looked down at Yi Luoyang and ridiculed without restraint. Trash, I was able to defeat you during the palace entrance test, and I can trample you beneath my feet this time as well. Shameless boasting. Yi Luoyang was completely infuriated. Moreover, as far as he was concerned, he only needed to ascend by 30 m more to surpass Su Fang, and Su Fang would absolutely not be able to ascend any further. Thereupon, Yi Luoyang erupted with all his strength as he strode up into the sky. It felt like he was climbing a tall mountain, and he finally ascended by 30 m with great difficulty before he was powerless to take another step forward. Chapter 2206. The chase between Su Fang and Yi Luoyang attracted the attention of countless people, including the Emperor Masters high up in the sky. They also projected their sensing power to observe the performance of the two. As expected of a peerless genius who entered the Yuan Tiangong. His cultivation is only at the hierarch realm, yet he is able to overcome the shackles of the power of the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon to almost catch up with a domain lord. Not bad. This genius named Su Fang will at least become a domain lord in the future. If nothing unexpected happens, it is not impossible for him to become an overgod. This little guy from the Yi clan has performed even better this time. It is really a pity that he was squeezed out of the top 10 in the palace entrance test. Many Emperor Masters nodded. The performance of Su Fang and Yi Luoyang could be said to be shocking, but in their eyes it was only not bad. The universe was vast, and geniuses came forth in large numbers. In the past, there had been countless peerless geniuses who were more dazzling than the geniuses selected from the Yuan Tiangong. But how many of them had truly reached the peak? Talent was talent, but it was just a possibility to become a master. However, the Great Tao was difficult, and no one could guarantee what level they would reach in the end. These Emperor Masters could be said to be the top existences in the universe. What kind of genius had they not seen before? Therefore, in their eyes, including Di Yuan, these geniuses could only be considered not bad. Hearing some Emperor Masters praising Yi Luoyang, a thin old man in a green robe showed a complacent look in his eyes. This person was the Emperor Master of the Yi clan, known as Emperor Yi. Just as he was about to say a few words of modesty, Emperor Yi's divine light suddenly changed slightly. With a wave of his sleeve, a Xian Guang swept out, traversing hundreds of thousands of miles in an instant, enveloping Yi Luoyang and then quickly seeping into his body. Yi Luoyang's divine body, which was on the verge of collapse, stabilized. He had narrowly escaped death, but his eyes were still filled with lingering fear. But when he looked down at Su Fang, he revealed a domineering smile instead. No matter what, this young master has finally surpassed you, and it's sufficient to prove to everyone that I, Yi Luoyang, possess the strength to be ranked in the top 10. You've indeed proven that you have the strength to be ranked in the top 10. However, Su Fang's voice that was filled with ridicule sounded out. However, I can also prove that before me, Su Fang, you, Yi Luoyang, will always be a failure, a clown. The next moment, an aura surged into the sky as Su Fang's figure soared into the sky, instantly surpassing Yi Luoyang. This time, it wasn't 100 feet, but 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, until it reached 10,000 miles. Whoosh! Su Fang was like a blazing sun rising into the sky, causing an uproar. Only now did Yi Luoyang come to a sudden understanding. He'd been played like a monkey by Su Fang earlier. Su Fang acted as if he couldn't continue anymore. Clearly, he wanted to trap him and lead him to death step by step. If it wasn't for Emperor Yi personally saving him, even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. A kind of humiliation and anger from being tricked surged out from the bottom of Yi Luoyang's heart like a tidal wave. He couldn't help but spurt out another mouthful of blood. He stared at Su Fang intently as he gritted his teeth. However, when he saw Su Fang's figure flying straight to the 9 heavens, Yi Luoyang's confidence was greatly damaged. A thick layer of shadow was cast over his Tao heart, and it would eventually turn into an inner demon. The numerous geniuses below, as well as many gods in the distance, felt a chill run down their spines. Yin Buji's eyes were filled with fear. Su Fang is actually so ruthless. He almost killed Yi Luoyang unknowingly. The old ancestor is right. I definitely can't make him my enemy. Otherwise, I'll die sooner or later. Even if I saw Su Fang kill Fan Shu with my own eyes, I definitely can't reveal anything. Under the shock and fear, Yin Buji completely dispelled the idea of revealing the secret to Sanskrit. Moreover, he decided in his heart that if he saw Su Fang in the future, he would definitely take a 10,000 miles detour and never appear in his sight. High up in the sky. This kid is so ruthless. He's quite a character. The venerable sovereign of the Yi clan snorted inexplicably. A sharp light flashed in his originally cloudy eyes. I've heard that this kid is a cultivator who ascended from a great world. Before he ascended to the divine world, this kid dominated a great world and killed countless people. How can such a cultivator who ascended from a great world not be ruthless? Even the G people almost died in his hands. It's obvious that he's not an ordinary genius. The venerable sovereign of the Sanskrit said indifferently. He actually knew everything about Su Fang. Some peerless geniuses don't know how to restrain themselves. They're arrogant and wild, and in the end they die prematurely. This kid better not follow the same path as those geniuses who died prematurely. The venerable sovereign of the E-clan sneered. If he doesn't have any edge, how can he still be called a genius? The venerable sovereign of the Sang-Chio clan spoke at this time. With me as his Tao protector, he definitely won't die prematurely. The venerable sovereign of the Sanskrit clan and Emperor Yi both remained silent. The venerable sovereign of the Tao protector transmitted his voice to the venerable sovereign of the Sang-Chio clan. Sang-Chio, since you value Su Fang so much, why don't you come out and take him as your disciple? The venerable sovereign of the Sang-Chio clan smiled and replied, You're in a hurry to take in a unique disciple. Do you think I'll do the same as you? Although a heavenly treasure is extraordinary, how can it compare to Su Fang? Back when we were still taking the palace entrance test, I asked you for him, but you refused. Why are you ignoring him now? The Fan and E clans have already begun to set their sights on Su Fang. He'll be fine if he stays in the Yuan Tiangong, but if he leaves the Yuan Tiangong, he'll be in great danger. How can he show his edge without being sharpened? Aren't you afraid that you'll end up destroying him if you sharpen him too much? Then I can only say that I've misjudged him. Just as the venerable sovereigns were discussing Su Fang had already risen to within 100,000 miles of the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon. This distance was a height that only area lords could reach. Such an amazing performance left the peerless geniuses below in the dust. Those geniuses who were trying to surpass Su Fang were even more frustrated. The other experts who were paying attention to Su Fang were also amazed. Some even found it unbelievable and believed that Su Fang had used a magic treasure. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as Su Fang stepped into the 100,000-mile range, he felt the shackles suddenly become 10 times stronger. Even Su Fang's perfect realm body couldn't withstand such terrifying pressure. Cracks appeared on his body, and blood seeped out of his cracked skin. He sat down cross-legged on the ground and stopped using his divine power to resist. Instead, he drew the surrounding yin and yang energy into his body for the world tree to absorb. The yin and yang energy was the power of creation. As long as it was a living being, it could be absorbed. Even some special substances could absorb it. QL11 Su Fang's world tree didn't just contain the power of the world. It also contained the yin and yang energy of the world. It was the same type of energy as the yin and yang energy formed by the fusion of the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon. After the yin and yang energy was absorbed by the world tree, it immediately trembled violently. Cracks appeared on the thick trunk, and the branches formed by the true body's physique were constantly shattering. Even the heavenly Tao flower at the top of the tree was constantly expanding. It was during this shattering and expansion that the world tree began to grow and transform wildly. The world tree then poured the yin and yang energy into the yang meridian. The yin-yang Tao wheel formed by the 69 yang meridians began to vibrate violently. Thus, Su Fang began to cultivate the 9 yang 9 transformations to break through the 70th meridian. As he had absorbed the pure yang energy of the Shaoyang Divine Sun, and now he had absorbed so much yin and yang energy, Su Fang's yang meridian was even deeper and his yang energy was even more vast. It was estimated that this yang meridian was about to be completed. Furthermore, this yang meridian didn't need any opportunities of creation. The yin and yang energy released by the two divine artifacts, the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon, was a kind of supreme creation. It surpassed any spiritual item of heaven and earth except for creation's spiritual items. As the energy in Su Fang's body circulated, every corner of Su Fang's body was filled with the power of yin and yang. At the same time, it fused with the yin and yang energy that seeped in from the outside, cleansing Su Fang's divine body. Layers of impurities constantly seeped out. As the yang energy in the world tree and yang meridian increased, it meant that the world in Su Fang's body had also undergone a drastic change. This change didn't just mean that the energy in the small world in his body had become more vast and its surface area had become wider. It also caused a change in his realm. After stepping into the seventh transformation, Su Fang's small world seemed to have been split into yin and yang. This was the true essence of the yin-yang transformation. At this moment, after absorbing the vast yin and yang energy, it caused the world in his body to transform from yin and yang to a higher level. As for what exactly it was, Su Fang wasn't too sure for the time being. However, one thing was certain. As long as the 9 yang 9 transformations reached the 8th transformation, the power of creation he obtained this time would cause the transformation of the world in his body to be even more astonishing. The Xianhuang 6 Paths pagoda doors were all open. It was also crazily absorbing the yin and yang energy. The yin and yang energy could even absorb matter, let alone Su Fang's natal magic treasure. The pagoda that Su Fang had placed in his body to nourish was also absorbing Su Fang's yang energy and yin and yang energy, allowing Su Fang to further fuse with his natal magic treasure. At the same time, it also accelerated the rapid growth of his natal magic treasure. At this moment, Su Fang looked like a huge black hole from afar. He was constantly devouring the surrounding yin and yang energy. Even an area lord expert couldn't compare to such a devouring ability. This didn't mean that Su Fang was stronger than an area lord expert. Instead, it was because Su Fang's world tree and the yin and yang energy in his world could directly fuse with the yin and yang energy in the outside world. Although the other area lords also cultivated the power of the world, they didn't cultivate the yin and yang energy in Su Fang's world. After absorbing the yin and yang energy in the outside world into their bodies, even area lords had to be 100 times more careful and fuse their own energy with the yin and yang energy. This was because the yin and yang energy was stronger than their own energy. The slightest carelessness would cause them to lose control of the yin and yang energy and cause their divine dwellings to collapse. Cultivating the world in my body is really advantageous. However, it still doesn't pose any threat to me. Chapter 2207. In the first 6 layered heavens of Primordius Heavenly Palace, Su Fang's performance had caused Di Yuan to feel threatened. However, the first 6 tests were not about strength, but more about talent, luck, Dao heart, and so on. In Di Yuan's opinion, no matter how outstanding Su Fang was in other aspects, it was impossible for him to surpass him. That was because he was born as a supreme imperial people. Imperial people were born with the ability to control the heavenly Tao. No matter how heaven-defying the cultivators who ascended from the great world were, how could they compare to him? Reality was so cruel. Some people were born with some things. Some people worked hard, struggled, and fought for their whole lives, but they could not have them. This was the difference between people. Moreover, Di Yuan was not an ordinary disciple of the imperial people, but the most outstanding genius of the imperial people. Sooner or later, he would be a supreme existence who controlled the heavenly Tao of all world. How could he compare? At this moment, witnessing Su Fang's amazing devouring ability, Di Yuan still did not feel threatened. He only felt a little shocked. QL11A domineering smile appeared on Di Yuan's face. Although you are extraordinary, you are still beneath my feet. If you can submit to me in the future, as long as the 3 realms are not destroyed, I will let you have a place among the supreme powerhouses of the myriad of realms. Otherwise, about 10 days later, Su Fang suddenly stood up. Di Yuan raised his sword-like eyebrows. Could it be that he still wants to strive for greater heights and attempt to challenge this young master? He is overestimating himself. Whoosh! Su Fang's figure rose rapidly, and he instantly soared thousands of miles away with the momentum of a soaring dragon. Not only did he want to surpass Di Yuan, but the power of yin and yang below was also not enough to satisfy his cultivation. Another 15 days passed. Su Fang finished his cultivation and soared again. At this time, He was already close to Di Yuan. Is Su Fang trying to defy the heavens? Challenging Di Yuan? Is Su Fang qualified? This is a fierce battle. This is going to be interesting. Su Fang suddenly became the focus of everyone's attention. However, no one thought that he could surpass Di Yuan. Su Fang sat cross-legged in the air. After forming a seal, the World Tree, the Yang Meridian, and the Tao Palace of Heaven and Earth trembled violently. The power of Yin and Yang in the outside world and the power of Su Fang formed a strange vibration, as if the two sides of the world were resonating with each other. The power of Yin and Yang swept over, whistling around the Su Fang. Strange halos appeared on the edges of the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon in the sky. They trembled and formed a strange resonance with the heavenly Tao. After a round of frenzied devouring, Su Fang felt that the World Tree and Yang Meridian had reached saturation. His divine dwellings were also full. He only needed one more long period of seclusion to break through the peak of the 7th heavenly layer and advance to the next level. The 70th Yang Meridian was also about to be born. Di Yuan, since you dare use Xuanxin to threaten and humiliate me, then I'll trample you beneath my feet under the gazes of everyone present today. Su Fang's heart was filled with anger. He raised his head and let out a long howl. His voice was filled with a lofty aspiration to surpass the heavens and earth and an incomparable domineering aura. His figure soared into the sky. The closer he got to the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon, the more terrifying the pressure and shackles formed by the power of Yin and Yang became. Only domain lords dared to enter the range between 10,000 miles and 50,000 miles. However, even domain lords could only resist the shackles while carefully absorbing the power of Yin and Yang into their bodies and fusing it. Even region lords weren't able to fly without the slightest restraint like Su Fang. If the power of Yin and Yang released by the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon were compared to water, then Su Fang was like a fish swimming against the current. Although the current formed a great resistance to him, it could not drown the fish. However, it was different for others. Even those domain lords and overgods did not have the power of Yin and Yang. They were like swimming in a river or a lake, relying entirely on their own abilities. In the short span of a dozen breaths, Su Fang rose against the heavens and chased after Di Yuan. Although he had slowed down a lot at this rate, catching up and even surpassing Di Yuan would be easy. The numerous geniuses below were all shocked. Only now did they realize the gap between them and Su Fang. This despicable ant can actually reach such heights. Looking up at Su Fang, Yi Luoyang's heart suffered a heavy blow again. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Waves of emotions surged in Yin Buji's heart. He completely dispelled the thought of taking revenge on Su Fang. Tian Bao, Chu Bingyan, and the other geniuses all sighed helplessly. Chu Bingyan said, "Being in the same era as Su Fang and entering the Yuan Tiangong Heavenly Realm Dao grounds at the same time is truly our misfortune." There were also geniuses who were burning with fighting spirit. "We are inferior to him now, but it does not mean we will always be inferior to him. I, Assault Wind, only had one goal in the past, and that was to surpass Di Yuan. Now I have another goal, Su Fang. You want to surpass this young master? How can I let you do as you wish?" Di Yuan finally felt a great threat. With a snort, a supreme divine might that could control the heavenly Tao erupted. Not only was the surrounding Yin and Yang energy unable to form a shackle on him, but it was also controlled by him. The current Di Yuan was like a huge ship that was riding the wind and breaking the waves. The Yin and Yang energy released by the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon were also controlled by him, pushing him upwards. At this moment, he was the center of attention. Soon, Di Yuan arrived at a place close to 10,000 miles away from the two divine artifacts. If he continued to advance, that would be a height that only overgods could reach. Although Di Yuan could control the heavenly Tao, no matter how extraordinary he was, It was impossible for him to reach the height of a overgod. If he continued to advance, it would be like a huge ship in the river. Once it reached the sea, it would only be the ship that would be destroyed. Looking down at Su Fang and the numerous geniuses below, a sense of superiority spontaneously arose in Di Yuan's heart. In the past, Di Yuan had always been like this, looking down on everyone. However, it was different this time. This time, he could trample Su Fang under his feet. It was a completely different feeling from before. Who knew Su Fang's figure was still climbing upwards? Although it was more than 10 times slower than before, he was still calm and composed. Soon, he was on par with Di Yuan. Su Fang looked at Di Yuan and smiled. He curled his lips and said, "You said before that you would trample me under your feet? I didn't expect that the great Shao Zun of the imperial people would also boast." Di Yuan shouted domineeringly, "Arrogant! I, Di Yuan, am the imperial people's Shao Zun, the #1 genius in the universe. From the day I was born, I was destined to be the ruler of the universe. I, Su Fang, am the exact opposite of you. I was born in a small world and was destined to be unable to cultivate. However, I don't believe in fate. I changed my fate step by step and walked from a small world to my current height. Along the way, countless experts tried to trample me under their feet. In the end, not only did I live well, I even surpassed the peak time and time again. As for those who tried to trample me under my feet, they were all trampled under my feet," Su Fang said slowly. In his calm tone, there was a hint of arrogance. "Changing your fate? Your fate is controlled by me and controlled by me. This is the will of the heavenly Tao. How can you change it? Today, I will let you know what it means to be unsurpassable and what it means to defy fate." Di Yuan snorted disdainfully. A ruler's aura erupted from his body. Mysterious heavenly marks condensed on his white robe, releasing a golden xian guang. One could vaguely see the sun, moon, stars, mountains, rivers, lightning, clouds, and other heavenly Tao phenomena. The white robe on his body was actually a half-creation divine artifact. It could increase Di Yuan's divine might by several times. Di Yuan's aura immediately changed drastically. His ability to control the heavenly Tao increased by several times. He was like a supreme ruler who controlled the universe. The surrounding yin and yang forces pushed him up under his control. Di Yuan crossed the limit of 10,000 miles and reached a height that only overgods could reach. Who knew Su Fang stepped forward and broke through the shocking shackles. He also charged into the range of 10,000 miles. Cries of surprise could be heard from the crowd below. The emperors in the sky all looked over. Even the supreme existence of the imperial people looked at Su Fang and Di Yuan with surprise in his eyes. Di Yuan glanced at Su Fang and saw that his divine body was shattering. A series of earth-shattering sounds came from his body. It was a sign that his spiritual dwellings were about to collapse. "Humph, let's see how long you can last. You almost killed Yi Luoyang with your tricks. I'll give you a taste of your own medicine and drag you to death." Di Yuan was very domineering. With a boom, his body rose into the sky again. This Di Yuan is indeed not an ordinary genius. In terms of true strength, I'm not as good as him. Moreover, he has a supreme divine artifact. Su Fang was also very surprised. This was the foundation of the supreme imperial people. Any random divine artifact was a half-creation divine artifact. How could other geniuses compare to him? Su Fang. At this time, Emperor Sangqiu's voice sounded in his mind. "Sir Emperor! If you still have strength, do your best to show it. This time, not only is it a fortune, but it's also a test for other geniuses. Don't worry about exposing your strength. The stronger you show, the more attention you will receive. It will be more beneficial for you to enter the Yuan Tiangong." As expected of a venerable emperor, Emperor Sangqiu could see that Su Fang was still hiding something at a glance. "Thank you for your reminder, Sir Emperor." Su Fang no longer had any scruples. he activated the purple Chi Dharma spirit and displayed the divine power to control the heavenly Tao. His figure rose into the sky. The moment Su Fang activated the purple Chi Dharma spirit, the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon in the sky trembled violently. The power of yin and yang that was released was no longer as violent as before around Su Fang. Instead, it became docile. Although the divine power of the purple Chi Dharma spirit could not control the two divine artifacts, it weakened the shackles formed by the divine power of the two divine artifacts on Su Fang. In addition, Su Fang's world yin and yang energy made the surrounding yin and yang energy extremely compatible with Su Fang. Boom, boom, boom. Su Fang flew up like the wind, rapidly closing the distance between him and Di Yuan. Soon, they were neck to neck and then quickly overtook him. Di Yuan, it looks like you're going to lose this time. Su Fang looked back at Di Yuan, his tone full of ridicule. Di Yuan's eyes suddenly became sharp. For the first time, he realized that it was very likely that he would be overtaken by Su Fang. I am Di Yuan, the Di Yuan that no one can surpass. Chapter 2208. Ordained by the heavens, I wield the heavens. Heaven-wielding seal. Di Yuan used his self-created divine ability. At this moment, he was like a supreme existence that controlled the heavenly Tao. Di Yuan was born in the imperial people. The divine ability he mastered was much more powerful than his self-created heaven-wielding seal. The same great Tao could be cultivated and comprehended differently by different people. It was even more difficult for Di Yuan to integrate the imperial people's divine ability into his own great Tao with his own understanding of the heavenly Tao. In addition to his current cultivation, it was very difficult for him to use the full power of the divine ability. The self-created divine ability was the interpretation of his understanding of the heavenly Tao. When he used it personally, it could unleash even more powerful power. After using the heaven-wielding seal, the surrounding yin and yang energy was controlled by him, helping his ascension speed to be more than 10 times faster. In an instant, Di Yuan climbed another 10,000 miles. At this time, he was less than 30,000 miles away from the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyang divine moon, leaving Su Fang far behind. Crack, crack, crack. The mysterious heavenly marks on Di Yuan's robe began to collapse. All kinds of strange phenomena were also constantly shattering. Di Yuan knew that he had reached his limit here. If he continued to move forward, not only would he be humiliated in public, but he might even be injured. This is my limit. I'll use it to break through to the peak of the divine venerable realm, merge with the heavenly Tao, and advance to a higher realm. Everyone thinks that the supreme existence of my race can obtain supreme fortune by activating the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyang divine moon. How would they know that this fortune is actually prepared for me, Di Yuan, to merge with the heavenly Tao? Di Yuan sat down cross-legged on the ground and began to concentrate on absorbing the yin and yang energy. As for Su Fang, he no longer cared about him. A genius that was under his feet was not worth his attention. Heaven and earth as a tool, I control heaven and earth, purple Chi Dharma spirit. Su Fang pushed the purple Chi Dharma spirit to the extreme. Mysterious purple Chi lingered around him. A purple Chi canopy condensed on top of his head. A mysterious and powerful divine power that could control heaven and earth as if the universe was a treasure shrouded all directions. Boom, boom, boom. Su Fang stepped in the air, crossing 1,000 miles with each step. In less than 10 breaths, he was once again on par with Di Yuan. A low-level existence in the great world actually has the heavenly Tao power similar to the supreme imperial people. This is impossible. When Di Yuan sensed the commotion caused by the Su Fang, he suddenly opened his eyes and revealed an expression of disbelief. Then, a resolute expression flashed in his eyes. He immediately stopped his cultivation and prepared to charge upwards once more. At this moment, a majestic voice rang out in his mind, Diyuan, your Tao heart is in chaos. Even though his voice wasn't loud, it was like a thunderclap that caused Diyuan to be instantly jolted awake, and it was as if he'd been hit in the head. Cultivators pursued solipsism, the true self. Being influenced by external objects was equivalent to being indirectly controlled by others. Su Fang closed in step by step. Diyuan had no choice but to overtake him time and time again. Imperceptibly, his every move was already grasped by Su Fang. Diyuan looked at Su Fang, and coldness seeped out of his deep eyes. You are the first person who can mess with my Tao heart. Only by suppressing you can I stabilize my Tao heart. Once I succeed in my advancement, I'll definitely trample you beneath my feet and never let you rise again. The Emperor Realm Masters were also surprised by the purple cloud magic spirit's astonishing power. It's actually the great pregnant purple cloud. Is Su Fang also an artifact refiner? Otherwise, how could he turn the great pregnant purple cloud from the birth of thousands of magic treasures into such an amazing treasure? No wonder Su Fang could rise so quickly. It turns out that he has a treasure that brings him supreme luck. When he entered the palace to test his luck, it's no wonder he surpassed Diyuan. Only then did the Emperor Realm Masters carefully examine Su Fang, and they discovered the extraordinariness of the purple cloud magic spirit. Even the Emperor Realm Masters were amazed by this treasure that could bring about supreme fortune. However, none of the Emperor Realm Masters coveted Su Fang's purple cloud magic spirit. What Emperor Realm Masters pursued was not the peak of the heavenly way, but to surpass the peak of the heavenly way and transcend heaven and earth. No treasure in this world could tempt them. Although the purple cloud magic spirit was a unique treasure in the eyes of these Emperor Realm Masters, it currently belonged to a junior. If they forcibly seized it, it would cause flaws to appear in their Tao heart. When one reached the level of an Emperor Realm Master, a flaw in their Tao heart could sever their path to transcendence. Although the Emperor Realm Masters were not tempted, it did not mean that others were not tempted. In the distant void, a middle-aged man in a black Taoist robe was staring at Su Fang from hundreds of thousands of miles away. This middle-aged man had a head of withered hair and an aged face that looked like it belonged to the living dead. However, as the light in his eyes flickered, terrifying flames surged, as if they contained the flames of calamity that could destroy the world. This man was Heavenly Fire Divine Lord. Just as Su Fang displayed the supreme divine power of the purple cloud magic spirit, a mysterious purple cloud emanated from Heavenly Fire Divine Lord's black Taoist robe, making his appearance even stranger. I cultivate the Heavenly Fire Great Path, and need to constantly absorb the power of tribulation fire. With the purple cloud magic spirit, I can resolve the power of tribulation fire. The purple cloud magic spirit is an extraordinary treasure. How can it fall into the hands of a lowly existence? Su Fang, since you let the heavenly treasure escape my control, I will take your purple cloud magic spirit and complete my supreme Heavenly Fire Great Path. Heavenly Fire Divine Lord snorted coldly and closed his eyes to continue absorbing the power of Yin and Yang. Wang, the mysterious runes of the life-shrinking technique in Su Fang's mind flickered and condensed into the phantom of Heavenly Fire Divine Lord. Now that I've displayed the purple cloud magic spirit, Emperor Realm Masters will not forcibly seize it. I never expected it to attract Heavenly Fire Divine Lord's attention. Heavenly Fire Divine Lord, I'm afraid you won't come looking for me. Su Fang snorted domineeringly and sat down cross-legged. He struggled to stabilize his body and began absorbing the power of Yin and Yang to cultivate the World Tree and Yang Meridian. The power of Yin and Yang here was purer and more majestic. After Su Fang absorbed it without restraint, not only the World Tree, but the entire Heaven and Earth Tao Palace felt like it was going to explode at any moment. His divine abode also felt like it was filled with floodwaters that would erupt at any moment. Strange, what's going on? Could it be that I've absorbed too much Yin and Yang energy, resulting in a mistake in my cultivation? Su Fong could not help but worry. He immediately released his yang energy and will into the primordial chaos sacred mirror. Moments later, Shu Wanjin's weak voice swept over along with the frigid air. Su Fong, what's the matter? And not only have you condensed another yang meridian, but you are also about to reach the realm of heavenly Tao convergence? Heavenly Tao convergence. Upon hearing these words, Su Fong's heart jolted. He instantly had a profound insight, but when he tried to grasp it carefully, he failed to grasp it. In the past, your realm was insufficient. If I told you in advance, it would have disturbed your Tao heart. Now that you are about to step into this realm, Senior Sister will explain to you what heavenly Tao convergence is. Shu Wanjin spoke tirelessly. Gods at the Divine Emperor realm constantly comprehend the great Tao nomological laws at this realm. Gods at the Divine Venerable realm comprehend the essence of the great Tao. Experts who have surpassed the Divine Venerable realm merge themselves with the Heavenly Tao and use the Heavenly Tao as the foundation to create and derive their own nomological laws. This is the legendary Heavenly Tao convergence. Only by reaching the Heavenly Tao convergence realm can one surpass the Divine Venerable realm and reach a new realm, which is the realm that Divine Lords, Heavenly Lords, and Domain Lords are at. It is called the Tao convergence realm. After reaching the Heavenly Tao convergence realm, one's ability to control the world will multiply, surpassing the great realm lord of a great realm. One will be able to dominate a star zone, which is why it is also called the Divine Domain realm. Su Fong asked, the Ji people's expert I killed before, Ji Fong, should be a Tao convergence realm expert. A Tao convergence realm god doesn't seem to be that powerful? Not that powerful? Shu Wanjin's voice was full of pressure and reprimand. If it wasn't for the primordial chaos sacred mirror, and if it wasn't activated by the two of us, Ji Fong could have easily crushed you. Su Fong smiled sheepishly. That's true. Shu Wanjin continued. Reaching the Heavenly Tao convergence realm is actually projecting the power of the divine abode or the small world in one's body into heaven and earth, merging with heaven and earth to form a world and becoming the supreme ruler of that world. Su Fong said, it seems to be similar to a domain. It is somewhat similar, but after a divine domain realm expert reaches the Heavenly Tao convergence realm, what is formed is not a void space, but a world. Merging oneself with the Heavenly Tao convergence realm is not something a domain can compare to. At the level of a domain lord, one can even turn nothingness into reality and create a material world. Moreover, a divine domain realm expert also possesses a supreme ability, which is the heavenly law embodiment technique. Su Fong said, I've heard of the heavenly law embodiment technique before. It is to imitate the heavenly Tao convergence realm, materializing one's cultivation and laws, creating things out of thin air, forming a heavenly law embodiment, and combining it with the yang spirit to display a supreme ability. That's right. The heavenly law embodiment formed by every Tao convergence realm expert is related to the great Tao they cultivate. As for the ability and power of the heavenly law embodiment, it depends on the laws they create. What will my heavenly law embodiment be? You cultivate the supreme heavenly Tao and have cultivated a small world in your body, so your embodiment will naturally be different. I can roughly guess what it is, but I can't tell you in advance, otherwise, it will form a pattern in your heart, and that will be harming you. I see. Shu Wanjin then carefully warned, your main energy space is the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace, which is also the world in your body. Breaking through to the divine venerable realm and merging with the heavenly Tao is more than 100 times more difficult than other gods. Moreover, your cultivation has not reached the peak of the divine venerable realm, but there are signs of Tao convergence. This is a good thing, as it proves that your comprehension of the great Tao is far beyond your cultivation. However, it is also a bad thing, as if your cultivation can't keep up, the probability of failing Tao convergence will be much higher. Therefore, you must be careful. Once you fail Tao convergence, what awaits you is death. It's that serious. Su Fangdao was shocked, and a chill ran down his spine. Chapter 2209. You need a master to guide you in your cultivation. I can still give you a few pointers now, but I won't be able to after you reach the Tao unification stage. I didn't expect that the little brat from the small world would grow so quickly. Xu Wanjin sighed emotionally. Su Fang was speechless. He was a high-level ultimate god, yet he was called a little brat. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, in front of Xu Wanjin, Su Fang was indeed a little brat. When you reach the Tao unification stage, you have to pay attention to the following extremes. There are 2 energy spaces in your body. When you reach the Tao unification stage, you have to integrate your physical body, divine dwelling, and yang spirit with your inner world. Only then can you reach the heavenly Tao. When you reach the Tao unification stage, although there is no divine tribulation, there will be all kinds of illusions and inner demons. Your Tao heart must be as strong as iron, and you must believe in your Tao. Otherwise, it will cause your Tao to be unstable and you will fail. In addition, you need to prepare enough pills and spiritual items in advance to prevent your efforts from going to waste when you reach the Tao unification stage due to insufficient energy. Then, Xu Wanjin carefully reminded him of some things that he needed to pay attention to before leaving the mirror space with the cold air. Su Fang began to focus on cultivation. He did not have any other good ideas, so he could only use the world tree to absorb the yin and yang energy from the outside world and use the 9 yang 9 changes. The pure yang energy in his body circulated wildly and swept through every corner of his body with the power of heavenly cycle reincarnation. The origin saint realm also released cold air, forming a yin and yang dual cultivation. After that, the absorbed yin and yang energy were all merged, forming a vast aura that surged in Su Fang's body. As for how to reach the heavenly Tao, he could only go with the flow and could not force it. After all, he had not reached the peak of the 9th heaven of the ultimate God realm. About 10 days later, Su Fang's body gradually burned with a layer of flames. It was the tribulation fire. He did not expect to reach the 8th heaven of the ultimate God realm so soon. With a burst of sizzling sounds, the tribulation chi and tribulation fire instantly enveloped Su Fang. Immediately, his divine body trembled as the tribulation fire burned with surging momentum. However, there were not many impurities seeping out of his skin. It was because the yin and yang energy formed by the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon was a kind of creation energy that had the effect to cleanse the marrow. Being able to advance to the next level this time can be considered a stroke of good fortune. Su Fang was very happy in his heart, but there was a painful expression on his face. This time, the advancement did not take a long time. In just half a month, the power of advancement began to spread throughout his body. Another brand of the heavenly Tao was formed in his divine aperture, divine dwelling, and physical body. 8th heaven ultimate God. This advancement had caused Su Fang to lose a lot of his aura, and his body became empty again. At this moment, the world was filled with an astonishing amount of yin and yang energy. There was no need for him to consume any pills at all. He could just absorb the yin and yang energy and recover rapidly. While Su Fang was ascending, Di Yuan opened his eyes and glanced at him. The corners of his mouth curled up in a disdainful smile. This time, he really got lucky and obtained a good fortune, successfully ascending a level. But compared to my fortune, it's not even worth mentioning. Another 3 months passed. This time, the supreme existence of the imperial people activated the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon. In addition to creating a star zone in the periphery of the Yuan Tiangong for gods to live in, there was another important purpose: to help Di Yuan reach Tao integration. At this time, Di Yuan had not yet begun to break through to the Tao integration realm. Naturally, the powerful being in white from the imperial people would not continue to activate the two divine artifacts to release the divine power of heaven and earth. During this period, some of the Yuan Tiangong geniuses also obtained amazing fortunes, and there were people who were constantly ascending. The powerful beings who came from various places in the distance also obtained great fortunes. However, compared to the Yuan Tiangong geniuses, they were still incomparable. Cultivating in the periphery was definitely not as effective as cultivating directly above the entrance of the Yuan Tiangong. Buzz buzz buzz. Su Fang sensed a commotion erupting in the heaven and earth Tao Palace. It was not the Yang Meridian, but the World Tree. QL11 he saw that the World Tree had already stopped growing. It looked to be about 10,000 feet tall, but it felt like it was going straight into the endless sky. Its branches and leaves were lush and majestic. The leaves emitted xian guang of different colors, and the heavenly Tao flower at the top of the tree also emitted rays of multicolored light. They intertwined and transformed into endless natural phenomena of heaven and earth. This is probably the final appearance of the World Tree? Su Fang guessed. His World Tree had grown from a fragment of the world by chance. It was unique in heaven and earth. He wanted to learn from the cultivation experience of the powerful beings, but he had no way to do so. He could only explore on his own. Suddenly, the Yang Qi and the Yang Meridian surged wildly toward the World Tree. Then, it was his physical body, life, blood, and various physiques, as well as the divine essence, primordial spirit, and dermic powers in his spiritual abode. All of these energies rushed toward the World Tree. The World Tree did not change much, but the heavenly Tao flower at the top of the tree withered rapidly, as if it was being absorbed by the World Tree. However, buds quickly formed on the branches. The World Tree and the Yang Meridian formed the Tao Palace of heaven and earth. It seemed like it was going to burst the restraints of his physical body and merge with heaven and earth. In just 5 breaths, Su Fang felt that his entire body had been sucked dry. He was so frightened that his heart trembled. From the outside, Su Fang's body was shriveled and his aura was weak. He was like a living corpse. The yin and yang energy absorbed from the outside world could not satisfy the World Tree. He quickly grabbed a handful of pills. They were all creation sacred pills that the Yin clan had used as an apology. There were more than a dozen of them, and he swallowed them without hesitation. As soon as the creation sacred pill melted, its medicinal power was quickly sucked into the World Tree along with the Yin and Yang energy from the outside world. Only then did the World Tree stabilize, and Su Fang finally breathed a sigh of relief. My World Tree and the Yang Meridian not only form the universe in my body, but also a bridge to communicate and control the outside world. Now that it's suddenly changed, it's obvious that it's about to reach the heavenly Tao realm. No wonder Senior Sister reminded me to prepare enough pills and spiritual items. I didn't expect the consumption to be so shocking before I even started the Tao unification. It seems that my cultivation is still not enough. I have a lot of pills and spiritual items, but how can they compare to the Yin and Yang energy? Su Fang looked up at the sky and stared at the 2 divine artifacts. His eyes flashed with decisiveness and determination. Since the Yin and Yang energy was not high enough at his current height, then he would continue to go up and devour purer and higher level Yin and Yang energy. Su Fang had only reached his current height with the help of the purple Qi Dharma spirit. How could it be easy to continue climbing? Right now, the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon are in the sky. This is a rare opportunity. If I miss it now, I don't know when I'll be able to reach the Tao unification. Therefore, I can't miss this opportunity. Cultivation is to surpass one peak after another. Although I don't have the superior conditions of those ancient divine clans and super-powerful geniuses, I have the heart of a cultivator. Su Fang continued to devour more than a dozen creation divine pills. After he had almost recovered, he stood up slowly against the force of the shackles and displayed the Kai Tian seal. The mysterious natural chaotic energy circulated in a strange pattern between his hands, and a terrifying divine might that seemed capable of collapsing the heavens and the earth erupted with a bang, forcefully tearing open a passageway through the shackles and pressure. Su Fang's figure exploded. A heaven-defying aura erupted like a divine dragon rising to the sky. Before the shackles and pressure formed by the yin and yang energy converged again, he rose more than 10,000 miles in one breath. Di Yuan suddenly opened his eyes. The eyes under his sword-like eyebrows flashed with intense shock and jealousy that could not be suppressed no matter how hard he tried. Di Yuan controlled his breathing and forced his heart to calm down. However, at this moment, the legend that he thought was unsurpassable was shattered by Su Fang in one fell swoop. His Tao heart was already in chaos, leaving behind a crack. The many geniuses below, as well as the many powerhouses in the distance, were once again shocked by Su Fang's actions. Waves of exclamations rose one after another. Xuanxin, our man is really extraordinary. Goddess Luo pursed her lips and smiled. A sense of pride spontaneously rose within her. Xuanxin smiled. In an instant, he melted like an iceberg. You don't need to remind me of this. I already knew this when I was in the outside world. The venerable sovereigns in the sky also focused their attention on Su Fang. All of them were moved. The venerable sovereigns of the Yi clan snorted. This kid is playing to the gallery. He's deliberately shaking Di Yuan's Tao heart. His intentions are worthy of death. The Sanskrit venerable sovereigns took advantage of the situation and said, "This kid has no respect for his seniors. He's not worth cultivating in the Yuan Tiangong." As the two of them spoke, the sound of thunder immediately rumbled beside them. It transformed into a supreme will that was about to descend upon Su Fang. This was the supreme divine ability of venerable sovereigns. When they opened their mouths, it was as if the heavenly Tao was punishing them. The venerable sovereigns of Sangqiu waved his long sleeves, and the divine power of Emperor Yi and Fan Di immediately dissipated. He said coldly, "Why don't I see Luoyang playing to the gallery?" Fan Shu wanted to play to the gallery, but in the end, she lost her life for nothing. Two venerable sovereigns are targeting a junior. Aren't you afraid that this will shake your Tao heart? Sangqiu, are you planning to become enemies with this emperor for a junior? Fan Di said gloomily. The sound of thunder in the surroundings suddenly became louder. Enough. The imperial people's white-clothed expert said indifferently. His voice contained the will of the heavenly Tao, and Fan Di's aura instantly disappeared. The geniuses below, not only Di Yuan, but each of them may be related to the survival of the universe. Do you understand what this emperor means? The voice of the imperial people's white-clothed expert made all the venerable sovereigns feel a supreme pressure and an irresistible will. Their hearts trembled. The height that Su Fang had reached at this time was almost the limit that a domain lord could reach. It was far beyond what he could bear. However, the power of yin and yang here was more than 10 times more abundant and pure than where he was before. As soon as he stopped, he immediately activated the ancestral dragon armor and quickly formed a seal. He used the great Yen seal to wildly sweep the power of yin and yang around him. The world tree trembled again, but it didn't grow. The flower buds on the branches quickly grew bigger and bloomed into flowers of different colors. Chapter 22:10. About 3 months later, the imperial people's white-robed powerhouse in the sky suddenly opened his eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up as he smiled slightly. The prodigy of my clan is finally about to converge. The other venerable sovereigns also projected their sensing power, paying attention to Di Yuan. A force of nothingness erupted from Di Yuan's body, shooting straight into the sky and disappearing into the depths of the firmament. He was clearly sitting there, but his entire person seemed to have disappeared from the world. Apart from the venerable sovereigns, even some over-god powerhouses could not sense his existence. In the next moment, thunder rumbled in the sky. A solemn and sacred aura instantly enveloped the world. The firmament seemed to be torn apart layer by a sharp sword. The heavenly Tao also seemed to be stripped of its mysterious veil at this moment. The shadow of a mountain peak emerged from the depths of the firmament. It was not the full appearance of the mountain peak. It was only a corner of the mountain peak, but it made everyone feel the majesty, and endless mysteries of this mountain. At this moment, in front of this corner of the mountain peak, everyone felt an endless pressure. It was as if their bodies had changed owners, and they could not help but kneel down in worship. It was not just the deities. It felt as if the world was about to submit to this mountain. People tried hard to remember this mountain, but they were shocked to find that they could not remember anything at all. It was as if there was a force in the unseen world that was erasing people's memories, making it impossible for them to remember the mountain's appearance. The Celestial Worthy Mountain. This is the legendary Celestial Worthy Mountain. Su Fang also stopped cultivating, and his heart was filled with incomparable shock. This was only a corner of the mountain. How magnificent was the entire mountain! The golden rainbow monarch spoke from the depths of his body. That's right. This is the core of the universe, the Celestial Worthy Mountain. The chaotic divine tribulation of the deities comes from the Celestial Worthy Mountain. The so-called convergence with the heavenly Tao is actually to obtain the recognition of the Celestial Worthy Mountain, and to use one's own Tao to resonate with the Celestial Worthy Mountain and send down a projection. Every deity who converges will have such a phenomenon? Of course not. Compared to the number of deities, Tao convergence powerhouses in the universe are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. However, they are not as rare as venerable sovereigns. If every deity who converges will cause such a phenomenon, the Celestial Worthy Mountain would not be so mysterious. Su Fang understood. It seems that it has something to do with Di Yuan's cultivation method. In addition to his cultivation method, there is also his bloodline. The monarch race wields the power of the heavenly Tao, which is to say, they are the representatives of the heavenly Tao in the myriad worlds, and the exalted celestial mountain is the manifestation of the supreme heavenly Tao. When the monarch race powerhouses merge with the Tao, the commotion will definitely be different. His future achievements. He's very likely to become a venerable sovereign powerhouse. Although it's only a corner, it's Tao convergence, although it of the Tao convergences is celestial worthy. As Su Fang and the Golden Rainbow King were conversing, the celestial exalted mountain high in the sky trembled. The entire world seemed to tremble. Di Yuan's body exuded the power of nothingness, shooting up into the sky. There was a mysterious divine might that resonated with the exalted celestial mountain. Boom! Di Yuan's body trembled, and a majestic aura surged out of his body, sweeping through the void for 1,000 miles. Then, the aura rapidly shrank and condensed above Di Yuan's head, turning into a statue the size of a normal person. This was the statue of an old man. It emanated an ancient aura and boundless dignity. It emanated the aura of a supreme overlord. It was as if he controlled all the laws of the world, and all things had to submit to him. The old man's statue suddenly opened its eyes. When they sensed his gaze, even some ordinary region lords couldn't help but tremble, and they intended to kneel down and submit. The energy of yin and yang in the surroundings surged and shook. Then, the old man's statue disappeared into the top of Di Yuan's head. Di Yuan closed his eyes and began to further comprehend and consolidate his cultivation. Congratulations to the imperial people for the birth of another expert. He was able to make the exalted celestial mountain reveal its true form during the unification. Di Yuan will at least be a venerable sovereign in the future. He might even surpass us. He will definitely surpass me. Back when I was unification, the exalted celestial mountain only revealed a blurry shadow, but Di Yuan revealed his true form. There's no comparison. The world is changing and a catastrophe is imminent. However, with a peerless genius like Diyuan, the myriad worlds will surely be able to resolve this crisis. The imperial people first had Dixuan, and now they have Diyuan, as expected of the number one god clan in the myriad world. Many venerable sovereigns congratulated the imperial people's white-robed expert. In front of the powerful imperial people, these venerable sovereigns were no different from ordinary people. They took the opportunity to flatter and curry favor with the white-robed expert. The white-robed expert was unperturbed, and he laughed it off. One of the venerable sovereigns said, "Since Diyuan has succeeded in unification, the next step should be for all the venerable sovereigns to join forces and use the Supreme Great Tao, using the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon to rebuild the world." The white-robed expert said, "Let's wait a little longer." The other venerable sovereigns thought that the imperial people's peerless existence wanted to wait for Diyuan to stabilize his realm, so they kept quiet. "Diyuan has already reached unification? The gap between me and Diyuan is too big. There's no way I can catch up to him. No one can surpass Diyuan. Diyuan was able to reach this step because he was born in the imperial people. Although I'm born lowly and can't compare to Diyuan, I will never give up." The many geniuses below exclaimed as they witnessed the scene of Diyuan's unification. Many of these geniuses had the powerful strength to defeat Tao integration expert. There were even some peerless geniuses who could defeat mid-stage Tao integration experts equivalent to heavenly lords with the help of divine abilities and artifacts. However, reaching unification meant that one could be ranked among the strongest in the myriad world. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to achieve unification. Among the 10,000 Yuan Tiangong geniuses, less than a third of them could succeed in unification. In the myriad worlds, only 1 out of 100,000 venerable sovereigns would succeed in unification. Therefore, unification was a huge watershed in the path of cultivation. At this moment, Diyuan had easily integrated the Tao, and all the prodigies felt even more powerless. Comparing oneself to another could sometimes infuriate oneself to death. Being born from a monarch race was Diyuan's supreme fortune, so how could they compare? However, everyone's performance was different. Some were discouraged, while others were motivated by Diyuan. About 3 years passed. With the help of the power of yin and yang, Diyuan quickly stabilized his realm. However, this only meant that he had 1 foot in the Tao integration realm. He still needed to pass the divine tribulation and cleanse his marrow with the power of the heavenly tribulation. Only then could he be considered to have truly stepped into the Tao integration realm. Diyuan stood up and glanced at the many geniuses below with a disdainful spirit in his eyes. Finally, Diyuan's gaze fell on Su Fang in the sky, and his gaze suddenly became fierce. "Who is qualified to be above me?" Diyuan's figure swayed, and he instantly covered a distance of 1,000 miles. The power of yin and yang that previously formed a huge shackle and pressure on Diyuan could no longer pose much of an obstacle to him, who had merged with the heavenly Tao. Suddenly, an invisible force shot out from Su Fang's body and into the 9 heavens. It turned into a distorted aura that shot upward like a shooting star. Rumble! 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 The sky darkened in an instant, as if someone had pulled a thick curtain to cover the sky. The divine sun and the 6 evil suns in the sky were covered. The 2 divine weapons, the Shaoyang Divine Sun and the Shaoyin Divine Moon, also dimmed in an instant. Diyuan felt an invisible divine power of the heavenly Tao shrouding heaven and earth. It was as if there was an invisible existence in the unseen world that suddenly opened its eyes. After his unification, his ability to communicate and control the heavenly Tao was far better than before. However, under the divine power of the heavenly Tao, he could not move at all. He had completely lost the ability to control the heavenly Tao. The geniuses below and the gods in the distance were all shocked. Their faces were filled with shock and awe, and their bodies were trembling. The venerable sovereigns in the sky also looked up at the sky in shock. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. The will of the Heavenly Master has awakened at this moment. The white-robed expert of the imperial people stared at Su Fang. His deep eyes flashed with surprise, and a trace of doubt. In the sky, it was as if layers of fog had been lifted, revealing a huge face. This face looked very young, but it was filled with endless vicissitudes and supreme majesty. The moment this face appeared, heaven and earth became still, and the heavenly Tao stopped operating. The young face's eyes, which were originally closed, slowly opened a slit. There was a faint flicker of light in his pupils. In an instant, the gods below took a look, including the venerable sovereigns, and suddenly there was a roar in their mind. The creation of heaven and earth, the movement of the stars, wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, the vicissitudes of the sun and moon, and other celestial phenomena flashed in their minds. The young face's lips moved. Thunder rumbled in everyone's minds, but no one could hear what he said. My Tao is immortal, however. Su Fang could clearly hear a voice that had experienced the vicissitudes of life, ringing in his mind. My Tao is immortal? What does this mean? Su Fang was puzzled. He tried to comprehend it carefully. The shadow of a young man appeared in his mind, and some illusions kept flashing. Unexpectedly, the words, "My Tao is immortal," quickly faded from his memory at this moment. Su Fang immediately activated the heavenly secret life shrinking technique and displayed the divine power of destiny that could seize the creation of heaven and earth. He firmly engraved these words in his mind, and he would look at them carefully when he had the time. At this moment, the face in the sky quickly became blurry and was covered by the fog again. The divine power of the heavenly Tao that shrouded heaven and earth also dissipated. All of the strange phenomena vanished without a trace. Su Fang also lost his connection with the heavenly Tao. His heart sank. Did the unification fail? The white-robed expert of the imperial people in the sky raised his eyebrows. To be able to awaken the will of the heavenly master is as heaven-defying as it is. How could the unification fail? Chapter 22:11. You've just ascended to the 8th heaven of the Supreme God realm, yet you're already trying to merge with the heavenly law. You're really overestimating yourself. It's already fortunate that you didn't die. However, you're still quite extraordinary to be able to create such a heavenly phenomenon. The Sanskrit sovereign said disdainfully. However, his voice suddenly stopped as his eyes revealed an incredulous look. He was shocked to find that he had forgotten what had just happened. There was an invisible force that had completely erased his memory. The divine light of the other Emperor Realm Masters changed instantly. Like the Sanskrit sovereign, they had also completely lost their memories. They only vaguely remembered that Su Fang's failure to merge with the heavenly law had triggered a terrifying heavenly omen. And with the passage of time, these blurry memories would also completely disappear. Emperor Masters were existences who stood at the peak of the heavens and realms. Even if they died, their consciousness would still be imprinted in heaven and earth, as if they were immortal. What kind of power could erase the memories of sovereign experts? The answer was self-evident. Many sovereign experts were shocked and did not dare to recall what had just happened. The white-robed expert was also extremely shocked. He had seen more than the other sovereign experts and could remember more. The shock in his heart was naturally several times stronger than the other sovereign experts. It's a pity that you failed to merge with the heavenly law. Otherwise, the white-robed expert of the imperial people looked at Su Fang and sighed. He did not dare to say or think more. Although the imperial people were in control of the heavenly law, this ability was given to them by the heavenly law. They could only act according to the heavenly law. If they violated the heavenly law, they would also be punished by the heavenly law. In fact, they would be even more severely punished than the other gods. Then, the supreme existence of the imperial people prepared to continue activating the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon to join forces with the other sovereign experts to rebuild the world outside the entrance of Yuan Tiangong and create a new star region. Sovereign Yunidao and Sovereign Sang Qiu looked at each other and shook their heads in disappointment. Obviously, Su Fang's failure to merge with the heavenly law had greatly disappointed them. Failed to merge with the heavenly law? That doesn't seem right. I just released my aura and was preparing to break through. How could I have failed? Su Fang looked up into the sky with a puzzled expression. The scene that had just happened was still incomparably clear in his mind, and had not been erased. The words, "My Tao will never be extinguished," were imprinted in the depths of his mind. My Tao is indestructible. It should mean that my Tao is the same as the Heavenly Sovereign's supreme Heavenly Tao. It's not that I failed the Tao convergence. Rather, my Tao is also the supreme Heavenly Tao. It's on par with the Heavenly Tao of reality. That's why I'm unable to fuse with the Heavenly Tao. The Tao that belongs to me does not exist between the heavens and the earth, nor does it require the acknowledgement of the celestial exalt mountain. That is why it is difficult for me to fuse with the Tao, and there is no need for me to fuse with the Tao. My Tao does not exist in the heavenly Tao. My Tao is myself. Thinking of this, Su Fang was suddenly enlightened and in high spirits. He settled down for a moment. Su Fang recited the great Tao battle scripture in his heart, adjusting his mind to a state of tranquility. Then, he carefully comprehended the true essence of the 9 suns' 9 transformations, the heavenly secret life shrinking technique, the heavenly mystery solution, and the ethereal truth in his heart. Then, all the people and things that he had experienced in the small world until now flowed in the depths of his consciousness like a long river. After doing all this, Su Fang's Tao heart seemed to have been cleansed. His heart was clear and open, without a trace of impurities. My Tao. Su Fang's eyes were filled with incomparable determination. His aura suddenly became sluggish. His great perfection physical body and all the physiques of his real body, as well as the blood qi in his physical body, were all integrated into the heaven and earth Tao palace. His spiritual abode, as well as the star vortex and divine essence inside his spiritual abode, were also integrated into the heaven and earth Tao palace. The 2 energy spaces in his body became one. His divine aperture, yang spirit, primordial spirit, and even second primordial spirit were all integrated into the heaven and earth Tao palace. At this moment, Su Fang's entire body suddenly shrank and turned into nothingness. What is he doing? Di Yuan abruptly stopped moving and looked at Su Fang in disbelief. Su Fang is actually integrating the Tao again. Why is it that his integration with the heavenly Tao is so different from the others, and it doesn't even cause any abnormalities? The eyes of the imperial people's white-robed expert shone brightly. He did not continue to activate the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon. Instead, he unleashed a wave of divine might and formed a formation, covering Su Fang and the surrounding 100,000 miles of space. Even the venerable sovereigns in the sky could not sense what was happening inside. Di Yuan, who was not far from Su Fang, and a few over-god experts in the distance, were moved away by the white-robed expert's divine might. Boom! Where Su Fang disappeared, a wave of divine might erupted, carrying with it an aura that could split the heavens and earth. All matter and energy in the space, including the yin and yang forces formed by the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon, were disintegrated under this aura and turned into their original state. A large tree appeared from the void. Its trunk was thick and strong, and its branches were luxuriant. It broke the shackles of the heavens and earth, forcibly opening up a new world between heaven and earth. Flowers of different colors bloomed on the 6 main branches of the large tree, emitting waves of mysterious xian guang. The aura of the great Tao swirled around the tree, condensing into mysterious and profound symbols. Around the large tree were streams of dazzling stars. There were a total of 69 stars, forming a spiral state of the yang meridian. There were a total of 8 circles, but the 8th circle was not complete. The first star stream in the center of the inner circle was connected to the roots of the large tree. The last star stream in the outermost circle, which was the 69th star stream, was connected head to tail to form a huge spiral pattern. The large tree and the stars were connected together, forming a world. The world seemed to only cover 1,000 miles, but it was actually boundless. The stars flowed slowly, flashing with wind, rain, thunder, lightning, flowers blooming and withering, wind blowing, clouds moving, and other phenomena. Every scene in the universe could be found. The wheel of heavenly Tao. I see. When the white-robed expert of the imperial people saw this scene, a look of understanding appeared in his eyes. Unification of the Tao. In the space opened up by the large tree, Su Fang's majestic voice sounded like the voice of the heavenly Tao. At this moment, he already understood that his unification of the heavenly Tao was different from that of other gods. For other gods, the unification of the heavenly Tao was to merge the great Tao that they cultivated with the heavenly Tao and obtain the recognition of the heavenly Tao to form a world. However, Su Fang's unification of the Tao was to project his own small world into the universe, domineeringly opening up a world that belonged to him. Boom, boom, boom. The large tree formed by the world tree and the 69 yang meridian rivers disappeared into the void. An endless sky appeared, and the outline of the earth began to condense. The universe was dark, and lightning flashed continuously, causing all kinds of natural forces to collide violently. All things were being born, and thousands of great Tao laws were also evolving. A universe that transcended the universe of the universe suddenly appeared. It was different from when Su Fang released the divine power of the world in his body. This was not a void space condensed by divine power, but a real world. The laws, energy, and even matter were all real existences. Although it could only cover 1,000 miles of space, the interior of the world was boundless. Once the enemy was enveloped in his world, they would only be shackled and suppressed. Unless they had the ability to destroy the world. Su Fang estimated that domain masters could shake his world, but it would be very difficult for them to destroy his world. My Tao is the universe of the universe. Su Fang witnessed the ups and downs of the universe and the changes of the world in his own world. All the changes were in his heart, as if he was reading a book on his palm. This feeling was like the heavenly Tao, controlling everything in the world. Suddenly waves of powerful shackles surged from the surroundings, causing Su Fang's world to shake and shatter layer by layer. It's the repulsive force of the heavenly Tao. My Tao is the supreme heavenly Tao that transcends the universe. Naturally, it will be repulsed by the heavenly Tao. If I can't withstand the impact this time, it will be equivalent to failing the Tao unification. Su Fang had expected this. The repulsion of the heavenly Tao was also a kind of recognition of the heavenly Tao. If he could not withstand it, he would not be qualified to receive the recognition of the heavenly Tao, which meant that there was no need to continue existing. The repulsion of the heavenly Tao was the first test. There would be a test of the Tao heart after that. He focused all his energy to deal with the repulsion of the heavenly Tao. Boom, boom, boom. The repulsion of the heavenly Tao was like a heavenly tribulation. How terrifying was it! Bolts of heavenly lightning and heavenly fire appeared from the void. There was also an invisible divine power of the heavenly Tao that launched a swift and violent attack on Su Fang's world from all directions. If Su Fang waited until he was at the peak of the 9th heaven of the ultimate God realm before he merged with the heavenly Tao, it should not be difficult to resist the repulsion of the heavenly Tao. However, the benefits to Su Fang of reaching the Tao integration stage in advance were self-evident. It meant that his world cultivation would reach a whole new level. He possessed the divine ability that only Tao integration stage experts could use while still in the divine venerate realm. Moreover, it would also lay a solid foundation for his future cultivation. A huge gain meant that he would have to face a huge risk. After all, he had just ascended to the 8th heaven. It was very difficult for him to resist the repulsion of the heavenly Tao. Su Fang's world began to collapse under the bombardment of the heavenly Tao's tribulation. The galaxy formed by the world tree and the yang meridian also began to appear. The galaxy shook, but it was still very stable. After all, Su Fang's yang meridian was formed from the cultivation of the 9 yang 9 transformations. It was very difficult to shake it. However, the world tree could not support the entire world. Its leaves began to rapidly wither and the tree trunk made a series of cracking sounds. Cracks spread all over the world tree. QL 11-inch, could it be that I have failed? No way. Su Fang's heart was filled with despair. However, a stubborn belief made him persevere. In a flash, countless thoughts flashed through Su Fang's mind. At the same time, he also used the mysterious solution of heaven's expansion and mysterious solution of heaven's expansion to make countless deductions. He was looking for a chance of survival in this hopeless situation. Found it. Chapter 22:12. Through the heavenly secret life shrinking technique and the heaven's expansion mystic unravel, Su Fang found a ray of hope in this hopeless situation. A divine might that could transform between reality and illusion spread out from Su Fang's world and quickly filled the entire world. Ethereal true enlightenment. After ascending to the myriad worlds, Su Fang had never stopped cultivating the ethereal true enlightenment. He increasingly felt that the ethereal true enlightenment was profound and powerful. Moreover, as Su Fang's comprehension of the heavenly Tao increased, his understanding of the ethereal true enlightenment also became more profound. He had far surpassed the creator of the ethereal true enlightenment, the ethereal spiritual master. Although the ethereal true enlightenment was a divine ability created by the ethereal spiritual master, it contained the Tao of reality and illusion. It could create something from nothing and condense something from nothingness. The 9 yang 9 transformations that Su Fang cultivated and the 9 yin 9 transformations that Xu Wanjin cultivated contained the Tao of yin and yang. It was a supreme heavenly Tao that could create everything from nothingness. The ethereal true enlightenment was combined with the Tao of yin and yang. At this moment, when it was used in Su Fang's world, it immediately stabilized the collapsing world and stopped the speed of the world's collapse. The ethereal true enlightenment is only the first step. If I want to live, the heavens can't take it away from me. Heavenly Secret Life Shrinking Technique. Su Fang used the Heavenly Secret Life Shrinking Technique again. It was a kind of magical power and destiny that could change fate. It forcibly stopped the world's destruction and death. Although it couldn't go against the heavenly Tao's repulsive force, it greatly delayed the world's collapse. Next, the purple chi spirit merged with the world, causing the world to not only possess a supreme heavenly Tao's luck, but the world also became like a magic treasure. The divine might it released suddenly increased by 10 times to resist the heavenly Tao's repulsive force and destruction. However, the heavenly Tao's repulsive force was too terrifying. The ethereal true enlightenment, the heavenly secret life shrinking technique, and the purple chi spirit could only delay it but couldn't stop it. The world trembled and shattered under the heavenly Tao's repulsive force. The cracks on the world tree became even more numerous and bigger. It wouldn't be long before it collapsed. At this moment, whoosh, an emerald green leaf appeared in the world. Within the leaves there was an ancient and vast wood element essence, as well as the will of the builder tree that could support the heavens and the earth. There was also a familiar yin and yang energy. This leaf was the life-saving divine artifact that Su Fang had used to kill the Ji people's expert Ji Feng with the Origin Sacred Mirror. It was a semi-divine creation artifact refined from the creation wood. Su Fang and Shu Wanjin worked together to use the yin-yang transformation to activate the Origin Sacred Mirror. They erased all the array formations and imprints on the leaf divine artifact, returning it to its original leaf state. Then, it was absorbed into the internal space of the Origin Sacred Mirror and suppressed by the Ancient Mirror's power, forcing the leaf to fuse with the Ancient Mirror's power. Su Fang took it out because he wanted to use it to stabilize the world tree. This leaf came from the creation wood. Not only did it contain the essence of the creation wood, but it also contained the essence of the creation wood. The builder tree was a supreme divine tree that connected heaven and earth. It contained a supreme power that could support heaven and earth. Under the urging of Su Fang's mind, the leaf fell on the tree trunk with a pa sound. Under the effect of the yin and yang forces, it quickly merged with the world tree. In an instant, the world tree, which was about to shatter, suddenly erupted with a shocking power that could support heaven and earth. It immediately became as stable as a rock. The wood element essence of the builder tree was also rapidly repairing the cracks on the world tree. Although the entire world had become dilapidated, it had finally stopped collapsing. However, under the impact of the heavenly Tao's repulsive force, the world became much more illusory and was no longer as real as before. QL-11 bolts of heavenly lightning and heavenly fire were still crazily attacking Su Fang's world, trying to completely erase it before it was born. Su Fang's heart gradually sank. It's still not enough. What should I do? Heavenly treasure. A figure appeared in the world. Yu Miaomei. Only Yu Miaomei would call Su Fang that. In the outside world, Su Fang fought with the Blood River Lord's slaughtered doppelganger. At the crucial moment, Yu Miaomei stepped forward bravely and used the ethereal enlightenment to stop the Blood River Lord. After that, she fell unconscious. After Su Fang gathered all the fragments of the manifestation of nature's Dharma, Yu Miaomei finally woke up. However, she became taciturn from then on. Su Fang was actually very clear about the reason for Yu Miaomei's change, but he never revealed it. After the manifestation of nature's Dharma was repaired by Mo Tiangong, Su Fang let Yu Miaomei study the manifestation of nature's Dharma in his inner world and cultivate the ethereal enlightenment. He did not expect her to come out at this time. Yu Miaomei calmly said, "Heavenly treasure, give me the manifestation of nature's Dharma." Su Fang was surprised. Manifestation of nature's Dharma? Miaomei, what do you want the manifestation of nature's Dharma for? I'm the original soul of the manifestation of nature's Dharma. Naturally, I have to use it to help you. Su Fang hesitated for a moment. With a thought, the manifestation of nature's Dharma broke through the void and appeared in front of Yu Miaomei. After being repaired by Mo Tiangong personally, the manifestation of nature's Dharma was not only restored to its original form, it was also upgraded to the level of a high-grade divine artifact. The patterns of wind, rain, thunder, lightning, stars, clouds, birds, and beasts formed by the heavenly scars flickered with rainbow-colored rays, displaying the myriad phenomena of the world. It revealed a mysterious divine might that could change between reality and illusion. Heavens, Brother Bao, thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me experience the joy of being a human. Yu Miaomei said with a smile, but tears kept rolling down from her eyes. Su Fang realized something and quickly shouted, "Miaomei, what are you doing?" Boom, boom, boom. Another round of heavenly tribulations struck the periphery of the world. The entire world trembled violently. The periphery was shattered and the world became much more empty. Su Fang had no choice but to focus all his energy to deal with it. At this moment, Yu Miaomei suddenly formed a hand seal. Traces of life blood seeped out of her body and were quickly absorbed by the manifestation of nature's Dharma. Su Fang was suddenly anxious. He condensed a yang spirit and appeared in front of the manifestation of nature's Dharma to stop Yu Miaomei. "Tianbao, if you stop me, it's equivalent to erasing me." Yu Miaomei's pleading voice made Su Fang's heart ache. After I fainted last time, I understood a lot of things. I was originally the original spirit of the manifestation of nature's Dharma. My old master, the misty spiritual master, created me. In the chaos, he used the manifestation of nature's Dharma to absorb mysterious substances from the chaotic galaxy of nothingness. Finally, he built a planet in the galaxy. It was also this planet that brought disaster to my old master. It attracted the covetous eyes of the strong. The planet was shattered, and so was the manifestation of nature's Dharma. The cultivators and civilians on the planet were all killed by the strong. Even the women and children were not spared. Fortunately, my old master separated me from the manifestation of nature's Dharma in advance and integrated me into the bloodline of his descendants. After generations of bloodline nurturing, I finally became a human. After I fainted and woke up in the outside world, the imprint that my old master left in the depths of my consciousness was also broken. This allowed me to understand the mission that my old master gave me. The manifestation of nature's Dharma was my old master's lifelong goal. He was mocked, ignored, and even humiliated. His dream was trampled on time and again, but in the end, he succeeded in creating the manifestation of nature's Dharma. The meaning of my existence is to fulfill his wish, to let the manifestation of nature's Dharma shine again, and to let his dream continue. Otherwise, I will lose the meaning of my existence and will slowly fade away. This is my destiny, and no one can change it. Rather than this, it's better to let me stay in your world forever. This way, I can be with you at all times. As she spoke, Yu Miaomei's life and blood were rapidly drained and absorbed by the manifestation of nature's Dharma. Looking at Su Fang, Yu Miaomei revealed a sweet smile. Her physical body quickly shattered and turned into ashes. A transparent shadow appeared in front of Su Fang. "Oh my God, Brother Bao, I've always liked you. I didn't dare to tell you. Am I useless?" Yu Miaomei giggled and then entered the manifestation of nature's Dharma. Boom, boom, boom. An aura of nothingness erupted from the manifestation of nature's Dharma and quickly merged with the world. Then, a kind of yin and yang divine power that evolved from illusion and reality cooperated with the yin and yang power of Su Fang's world to erupt with a power that ordinary semi-divine creation weapons could not display. This caused Su Fang's world to undergo a reversal from nothingness to reality. The world that was about to collapse finally recovered to its original state. The manifestation of nature's Dharma sank into the earth and absorbed the aura of the world from all directions, condensing it into matter and causing the earth to rapidly extend into the surroundings. Not only that, the repulsive force of the heavenly Tao constantly attacked the world, but Su Fang's world remained as stable as a rock. Finally, it gradually receded and became calm. Su Fang's integration with the heavenly Tao had finally succeeded. Withstanding the test meant that he had received the recognition of the heavenly Tao. However, Su Fang's heart was throbbing with pain. "Miaomei, thank you. I will never forget you." Su Fang steadied his mind and sensed his world. Although he had successfully integrated with the heavenly Tao, his world was riddled with holes and he did not know how long it would take for it to recover. "I'll recover first, then condense my heavenly Tao Dharma form." With a thought, Su Fang's world rapidly shrank and finally became nothingness. Su Fang returned to his physical state. The power of the Great Perfection stage was projected to the surroundings. Su Fang was surprised to find that after integrating with the heavenly Tao, his perception of the heavenly Tao had become more than 10 times clearer than before. Not only could he clearly sense the natural spiritual energy of the heavenly Tao, but he could also clearly sense the movement of energy. If he used the purple cloud Dharma spirit and the heavenly prying eye, he could even see the deeper mysteries of the heavenly Tao. The range of the perception of the perfect stage had also become extremely shocking. In the heavenly Tao, it could cover an area of 1,000,000 miles. A powerful feeling of being able to see through the heavenly Tao and break free from the shackles of the heavenly Tao arose spontaneously in his heart. Although my cultivation level is still at the 8th heaven of the ultimate God realm, after integrating with the heavenly Tao, I can easily crush a Tao integration expert who is at the same level as Qishao Shinjun, even if I don't use any powerful divine abilities. If I use the yin-yang change, I can also contend with a territorial lord without the help of the Origin Sacred Mirror. Chapter 22:13. Although I succeeded in Tao unification, I still suffered heavy losses this time. Su Fang's consciousness entered the heaven and earth Tao palace. What he saw shocked him, and he smiled bitterly. Although the cracks on the world tree had been repaired, they still covered the entire tree trunk and branches. The yang qi in the yang meridian had almost dried up. Even the jade-like yang meridian was grayish-white, and there were even tiny cracks on it. The entire yin-yang Tao wheel was dim, and the yang qi was weak. He activated the world tree and yang meridian to transform into his inner world. What he saw was a mess, as if it had been ravaged by a storm. Even the purple qi dharma spirit had become a lot more blurry due to the excessive consumption. And Miaomei, thinking of Yu Miaomei, Su Fang's heart ached again. Fortunately, Yu Miaomei had only transformed from a life form to a primordial spirit state, and was not dead. This made Su Fang feel somewhat comforted. After Su Fang formed a seal, he transformed his body into a blood-water state. He used heaven underworld to wantonly devour elixirs, spiritual items, and blood crystals. Fortunately, Su Fang did not lack resources at this time. The Yin clan had lost 100 creation divine pills last time, and there were still more than 70 left. The Golden Rainbow Monarch was no longer stingy. The Golden Rainbow Monarch's world was kept by Su Fang in the depths of his world. Once Su Fang's inner world was destroyed, the Golden Rainbow Monarch's world would also be destroyed. Of course, he would not be stingy with the treasures in his treasury. At the same time, Su Fang also activated his dragon-subduing true body and Black Lotus true body, using all his means to recover. About half a month later, Su Fang's energy had recovered by about 60 to 70%. Only then did he use the Great Evolution Seal to crazily absorb the pure Yin and Yang energy released by the Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon. He let the World Tree and Yang Meridian absorb it to restore the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace. It was relatively easy to recover the energy in his body, but the damage to the World Tree and Yang Meridian was not something that could be done overnight. Without a fortuitous encounter, Su Fang estimated that it would take 10,000 years. 10,000 years was nothing to other gods, but to Su Fang, his cultivation time added up to only 200,000 years. 10,000 years was an extremely long time. Just as Su Fang was concentrating all his energy recovery, suddenly the light of the Shaoyang godly sun and Shaoyin godly moon suddenly dimmed. Even the power of Yin and Yang was weakened by 30%. What happened? Su Fang looked up in surprise, and then turned into an ice sculpture. A divine sun and a divine moon descended from the sky, instantly traveling through the void. Judging from the direction, it was Su Fang. Who dares to throw the divine sun and divine moon at me? Su Fang was shocked and stunned. His mind went blank. A hierarch realm expert could easily destroy a star, and they could also easily move a star. But to use the divine sun and divine moon to smash people, what kind of divine ability did that require? Su Fang wanted to dodge, but he found that he couldn't even move his fingers. Even his primordial spirit's consciousness had stopped at this moment. Boom! Su Fang could only watch helplessly as the divine sun and divine moon smashed into him. It's over. Su Fang's heart was filled with despair. Just when he thought he would be smashed into ashes, he felt an extreme yang aura and an extreme cold aura being poured into his body in an extremely domineering manner. At this moment, Su Fang felt as if a volcano and an iceberg had been stuffed into his body. Sometimes it was extremely hot and sometimes it was cold. Sometimes it turned into an erupting volcano, exploding, and sometimes it was frozen into an iceberg. Which Emperor Realm expert is messing with me? Is it the Sanskrit Emperor Realm expert or the E-Clan's Emperor Realm expert? Su Fang was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He roared in his heart. Two auras, one hot and one cold, rushed into his mind. Then the whole world turned dark and he completely lost consciousness. After an unknown amount of time, Su Fang slowly woke up. A Emperor Realm expert personally attacked me, and I'm still alive? Su Fang was surprised and happy. When he opened his eyes, he found that he had returned to the palace in the Blue Dome 9 realms. You're finally awake. Xing Wuji's old voice sounded. There were many people in the room. Xing Wuji, Mo Tiangong, Xu Yunkong, Xian Lingzi, and the others were all there. QL11 Su Fang sat up and asked in surprise, "Why am I here? What happened?" Mo Tiangong said, "We also want to ask you what happened. When you were absorbing the power of fortune, you suddenly fell from the sky. If it wasn't for your two Dao companions saving you, you would have been smashed into meat paste by the fall. Fortunately, Zhao Yuan arrived in time and used his divine essence to treat your injuries. Otherwise, who knows how long you would have been in a coma." How long was I in a coma? What happened before? Su Fang tried hard to recall. He was hit by a divine sun and a divine moon and then fell unconscious. The Blue Dome Domain Lord said, "Before you fell unconscious, an Emperor Realm expert took action and isolated you from the outside world. No one knows what happened. You have been in a coma for more than 100 years. Outside the entrance of Yuan Tiangong, the Emperor Realm experts have changed the world." I've been in a coma for more than 100 years? Su Fang was shocked. He then cupped his fists towards Xing Wuji and thanked him. "Many thanks to Senior for saving me." Xing Wuji waved his hand and said, "You don't have to thank this old master. This old master was also ordered by someone." Su Fang was shocked. Someone who could order Xing Wuji was definitely an Emperor Realm expert. Su Fang speculated that it was Emperor Sang Qiu who ordered Xing Wuji to treat his injuries. Perhaps it was also Emperor Sang Qiu who smashed him with a divine sun and a divine moon. Why would Emperor Sang Qiu use a divine sun and a divine moon to smash me? Su Fang felt incredulous. His heart was filled with a sense of absurdity. It should be an illusion. It can't be something that really happened. After Xing Wuji and the others left, Su Fang immediately sensed his physical body carefully. He was surprised to find that his physical body was full of vitality. It should be the work of Xing Wuji. What shocked Su Fang was that the spiritual abode in his body had disappeared. Then he remembered that when he merged his spiritual abode with the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace, he would only have one energy space left, and that was the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace. His spiritual abode was mainly used to hide the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace. Now, with his strength and identity, there was no need to hide anything. Moreover, the fact that he had cultivated a small world in his body was no longer a secret. He quickly peeled off a young spirit and entered the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace. He saw that the cracks on the world tree had mostly healed, leaving only a few faint traces. It was the same for the Yang Meridian. In just 100 years, it had recovered by more than half, returning to its jade-like state. The 69 Yang Meridians were filled with boundless Yang Qi, and the 70th meridian that was being attacked was about to be born. The world tree and the Yang Meridian were fine, and a new Yang Meridian was about to be born. This made Su Fang feel relieved and happy at the same time. He continued to observe the changes in the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace. The Heaven and Earth Dao Palace formed by the Yang Meridian and the World Tree had an additional space formed by meridians. It merged with the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace, making the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace even more vast and deep. There were two more things in the Heaven and Earth Dao Palace that made Su Fang's Yang spirit instantly petrified and dumbfounded. In the sky above the heaven and earth Tao Palace, there was a crimson divine sun and a divine moon that looked like an ice wheel. They were so clear and real that they were exactly the same as the divine sun and divine moon in the real world. The divine sun and divine moon emitted extreme yang qi and extreme cold qi that blended with each other, fusing into a mysterious and pure power of yin and yang, which was constantly being absorbed by the world tree. Compared to the divine sun and divine moon in the real world, the power of yin and yang released by the divine sun and divine moon in the heaven and earth Tao Palace was not as majestic, but it was constantly nourishing the heaven and earth Tao Palace. Even if it was not cultivating, the world tree was still constantly growing. Although the speed was extremely slow, after a long period of accumulation, the effects were naturally astonishing. It's not an illusion. I was really hit by a divine sun and a divine moon, but they smashed into my heaven and earth Tao Palace, allowing me to obtain great benefits. Su Fang was shocked and pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly activated the heaven and earth Tao Palace and transformed it into the state of his inner world. The appearance of the inner world had changed greatly. In the sky, a divine sun and a divine moon hung high, emitting the power of yin and yang that nourished the world, causing the energy and laws between the world and the world to collide even more intensely. There was a faint aura of life in the matter. After the Tao unification, his inner world had undergone another great transformation. There was an additional divine sun and divine moon, causing the evolution of his inner world to accelerate. There were already signs of life being born. Who was it that was so generous as to give me a divine sun and a divine moon? Su Fang was perplexed. He carefully sensed the divine sun and divine moon in the sky. Soon, Su Fang discovered some clues. The divine sun and divine moon were not real, but illusory images condensed from energy. Judging from the aura they released, the illusory images came from the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon. There must be a supreme expert who used a great divine ability to extract a portion of the essence energy from the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon, condensing it into a mark and projecting it into my heaven and earth Tao Palace. Su Fang thought of what had happened before he was hit by the divine sun and divine moon and suddenly understood. Emperor Sangqiu should have the strength, but he does not have the authority. The only one who can do this is the white-robed expert of the imperial people. Senior Xing Wuji was most likely sent by him to treat my injuries. But why would the supreme existence of the imperial people help me? Su Fang deduced that the person who gave him such great natural luck should be that unmatched existence from the emperor clan. However, he couldn't figure out his intentions no matter how hard he tried. The benefits that Su Fang had received this time were too great, much greater than directly absorbing the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon. One was like giving a man a fish, the other was like teaching a man to fish. I wonder what level of strength I've reached now? Su Fang felt that his body was filled with great power, and he could not help but be eager to test it out. Fan Ming. Su Fang transmitted his thoughts to guard Fan Ming. Your Highness Su Fang, what are your orders? Chapter 22:14. Although Fan Ming was Primordius Heavenly Palace's Heaven Punisher and also came from the sect of an Emperor Powerhouse, he wasn't valued at all and his status was ordinary. Otherwise, a dignified domain lord powerhouse like him wouldn't act as a guard for a genius of Primordius Heavenly Palace. Su Fang had suppressed Di Yuan in front of everyone and displayed his shocking ability. Although he was covered by the supreme imperial people when he merged with the Tao and no one could see what happened, it still caused a sensation. Since Su Fang had soared to the heavens, Fan Ming, as a guard, naturally felt honored. In the future, if he followed Su Fang, as Su Fang's strength and status rose, he would also rise along with him. Su Fang said very politely, I've just merged with the Tao and would like to find someone to give me some pointers and learn from each other. Please enlighten me. Your Highness, you've merged with the Heavenly Tao? You're only a seventh heaven supreme god. No, you've just broken through to the eighth heaven supreme god and you've merged with the Tao? Fan Ming was shocked and looked at Su Fang in disbelief. I succeeded by luck. Su Fang smiled embarrassedly. Your Highness is indeed not an ordinary genius. You've even surpassed Di Yuan. Fan Ming was shocked as he followed Su Fang out of the palace. They flew out of the 9 realms of the Azure Dome. Su Fang subconsciously looked up at the sky. The Shaoyang Divine Sun and Shaoyin Divine Moon, refined by the Supreme Imperial People, were still hanging high in the sky. However, Su Fang immediately sensed that the world was no longer filled with pure yin and yang energy. After thousands of changes, it had turned into abundant natural spiritual qi. The deathly aura that used to fill the world was almost undetectable. The spiritual qi and world energy were pure and abundant, covering an extremely wide area. It was as wide as a star sector. Outside the star sector, there was a powerful world barrier condensed by world energy, blocking the evil energy emitted by the blood sun. Su Fang asked Fan Ming about it. It turned out that after he had fallen unconscious, over 30 emperor powerhouses had taken action at the same time. With their unsurpassed supernatural powers of the Great Tao, they changed the world around the entrance of Primordius' heavenly palace, turning it into a natural world where a divine being could live and cultivate. This new world was called the Hunyuan Heaven Realm. The strength of an Emperor Master is simply heaven-defying. He can actually create a new world. If it's like this in the outer regions of Yuan Tiangong, then how shocking would it be to live in the inner regions of Yuan Tiangong? While Su Fang marveled at the strength of a venerable emperor, he was also filled with anticipation and yearning for the inner workings of Yuan Tiangong. However, there were still several hundred years before they could enter Yuan Tiangong. There were still many things that had yet to be dealt with in Su Fang. For the time being, they could not enter Yuan Tiangong. Fan Ming suggested, Your Highness Su Fang, fighting in the Hunyuan Heaven Realm will cause too much of a commotion. If others come to watch, they will expose Your Highness' strength. Why don't we go to the void outside the Hunyuan Heaven Realm's world barrier? Su Fang nodded. All right. Thus, the two of them flew high into the sky. In the air, Su Fang could see that the area around the entrance to Primordius' heavenly palace had already been occupied by various influences, creating material continents or planets. This was originally a desolate void, but in a short 100 years, it had actually turned into a star territory that was beginning to take shape. Fan Ming asked, Your Highness also has a territory near the entrance to Yuan Tiangong. How will Your Highness deal with it? Of course it's useful. Su Fang ranked 3rd in the palace entrance test, so the territory he obtained was naturally one of the best. It was a good place to settle down his subordinates and his relatives and friends from the outside world. Father and the others will be here soon. Thinking that his father and his relatives and friends from the outside world would soon be reunited, Su Fang felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Arriving in front of the world barrier, Su Fang took out the Yuan Tiangong token. In order to prevent future attacks from resurrected experts, as well as to prevent more deities from flooding into the Hunyuan heaven, the world barrier was completely sealed. Normally, deities would have to pass through various array portals to enter the Hunyuan heaven. However, Yuan Tiangong prodigies could directly pass through the world barrier with the token. This was a privilege that other deities could not enjoy. Su Fang activated the Yuan Tiangong token, and a passageway opened up in the world barrier. The two of them passed through the passageway. The two of them were tens of thousands of kilometers away from the Hunyuan heaven. Fan Ming seemed to have transformed into a different person. He exuded the domineering aura of an area lord. Your Highness, what do you want to know from me? Su Fang asked. What's the difference between before and after Tao integration? Fan Ming said, After Tao integration, the power of the divine abilities you've cultivated in the past will multiply. This is because you've become one with the heavenly Tao, so your ability to draw upon the divine might of heaven and earth will multiply. Naturally, the power of the divine abilities will increase as well. Your Highness, you can try out the divine abilities you've used most often in the past. I'll suppress my cultivation base to the first heavenly stage of Tao integration. The Tao integration realm was also divided into 9 heavenly stages. Below the third stage was the early stage of Tao integration. Usually, experts known as Divine Lords belonged to this stage. However, the third stage, Divine Lords were not included in this list. He was known as a master because of his ability to refine weapons, so he was known as a Divine Lord. From the fourth to the sixth stage was the middle stage of Tao integration. Heavenly lords like Zhu Yanjun belonged to the middle stage of Tao integration. Above the seventh stage was the late stage of Tao integration, known as Area Lords. The Azure Dome Area Lord belonged to the eighth stage of Tao integration. Although Su Fang's cultivation base was only at the eighth stage of Divine Lord, he had already entered the realm of Heavenly Tao integration. It could be said that he was the favored child of the Heavenly Tao. However, Su Fang had only just reached Tao integration. Fan Ming, who was only at the first stage of Tao integration, was not looking down on Su Fang. Instead, he was taking Su Fang seriously. "I'll try. Be careful, Fan Ming." Su Fang nodded. He could not help but remind Fan Ming. "Your Highness, don't worry." Fan Ming's tone was filled with a sense of pride that came from his bones. He knew that Su Fang was able to challenge the Ji people alone when he was only a medium-level supreme god. No one below the Area Lord level could defeat him. However, that was just a rumor. Fan Ming guessed that it was because Su Fang had a powerful divine artifact that Tao Master Sang Qiu helped him. Otherwise, how could Su Fang defeat the Ji people with his strength? Fan Ming was not only a Area Lord, but he was also not an ordinary Area Lord. After all, he was a disciple of a sovereign. How could an ordinary Area Lord be compared to him? Chi, chi, chi. Su Fang's body spewed out flames, turning him into a flaming man. In an instant, he burned fiercely and turned into a burning flame state. It turned out that he had used the illusory fire cloud. However, it was different from the previous illusory fire cloud. This time, he used the world in his body as the heavenly Tao and merged the illusory fire cloud with the world in his body. This caused the divine might of yin and yang to be added to the divine might of flames. The divine might of flames swept out in all directions, enveloping 1,000 miles of space, forming a blazing world of flames. The flames melted heaven and earth, burning everything in all directions. Divine Emperor's cultivation realms were still at the level of power. Divine Venerable's cultivation realms had changed from power to great Tao. After the Tao integration stage, the divine might unleashed completely belonged to the great Tao. This was the Tao integration stage. It was the same illusory fire cloud, but after Su Fang's Tao integration stage, its power had increased by more than 10 times. Fan Ming's divine light instantly changed. This is not an ordinary Tao integration stage. It's using the world in one's body as the Tao. The divine might of flames is also not extracting essence from heaven and earth. It's a divine might of flesh. Such a terrifying divine might of flames. His Highness Su Fang is indeed a prodigy of the Yuan Tiangong heavenly realm. He can even surpass young Master Di Yuan. Fan Ming was shocked. In the next moment, a majestic and heavy divine might suddenly erupted. It quickly condensed into numerous towering mountains in front of him. They connected into a mountain range, exuding a majestic and unshakable aura, protecting him in the center. Fan Ming wasn't using the power of a first-level Tao integration realm cultivator. He was using the power of a third-level Tao integration realm cultivator. Boom! The flames were like surging waves, crashing into the mountain with a boom. With a burst of hoochie-hoochie sound, the mountain burst out with bursting sounds. It was actually being burned by the flames, and some places even began to melt. However, the power of the flame was unable to melt Fan Ming's thick defense, and it stood firm. Fan Ming wiped the sweat off his forehead. He was ashamed. He almost made a fool of himself. Who knew that in the next second? Phaseless fire cloud saber. In the world of flames, Su Fang's domineering shout rang out. Chi! Chi! Streaks of fiery blade radiance contained the astonishing power of fire and the yin and yang of the world. They quickly condensed in the world and swallowed Fan Ming and the surrounding mountains like a tide. An earth-shattering explosion occurred, and the mountain range's defenses were shattered. What a powerful fire god art! Fan Ming turned pale with fright. A dark Xian Guang was projected out of his body. The Xian Guang quickly formed a circle around Fan Ming. Then, it condensed into a dark, thick and ancient city wall. It exuded an indestructible and terrifying aura. The power that Fan Ming was displaying was no longer that of an early-stage Dao integration realm cultivator, but of a mid-stage Dao integration realm cultivator. Moreover, he had also used a defensive god art. The city wall formed by his god art, combined with the array formation and nature, could be built into a city for gods to live in. Boom! 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 Flames engulfed the city wall and burned it. However, the city wall only turned a little wider. His Highness Su Fang's power is shocking. The power of the flame is enough to threaten a mid-stage Dao integration realm cultivator. I'm impressed. Fan Ming praised loudly. He was sincerely convinced by Su Fang. The flames quickly shrank and condensed into Su Fang's original form. He didn't expect that after reaching the Dao integration realm, the combination of the illusory fire cloud and the world in his body could unleash such astonishing power. He was very happy. However, this battle was not over. It had just begun. Fan Ming, be careful. The power of the world of yin and yang shot out from Su Fang's body and covered Fan Ming and the city wall formed by his god art. In an instant, a real universe appeared in front of Fan Ming. He was in it and instantly lost contact with the outside world. He was shocked and didn't hesitate to unleash the full power of the seventh heaven of the Dao integration realm. Rumble! The city wall suddenly rose and became thicker. Break! Chapter 22:15. Under the crushing pressure of Su Fang's world, the city walls around Fan Ming crumbled layer by layer. However, they still stood firm. Kai Tian Seal. Su Fang used his self-created divine ability, Kai Tian Mudra. When he formed the seal, Su Fang was pleasantly surprised to find that after reaching Dao integration, using the heaven-opening seal with his inner world had become much easier and easier. It felt as if he could use it freely and naturally. As for its power, boom! A terrifying divine power that could split heaven and earth apart and destroy all things descended upon the city walls. The powerful defense of the area lord lasted for about 10 breaths of time before it finally crumbled. The remaining power of the Kai Tian seal did not diminish. It enveloped Fan Ming and made him feel like he was about to be crushed into powder. Dong dong dong! An earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out from within Fan Ming's body. A terrifying divine power that could shatter the earth shattered Su Fang's Kai Tian seal. The world trembled and turned from reality to nothingness. Finally, it completely collapsed. Su Fang stumbled and almost fell. The world he had just created was formed by projecting the power of yin and yang from the world outside his body. It was not a world formed by gathering all his strength and physical body. Thus, it was easily shattered. However, if the world formed by his own Dao integration stage was destroyed, it would mean that Su Fang's internal world would be severely damaged. He would not do this unless he was in a dire situation. Your Highness is mighty. I admit defeat. Fan Ming cupped his fists and said to Su Fang. His eyes were filled with shock and awe as he looked at Su Fang. If the battle continued, Fan Ming would definitely win. After all, he still had a powerful trump card that he had yet to use. The most powerful divine power of a Tao integration stage cultivator was the heavenly Tao appearance. However, Su Fang knew that if he used the yin-yang transformation, he would definitely be able to severely injure or even kill a Tao integration stage 7th heaven area lord like Fan Ming. Su Fang finally had a clear understanding of his own strength. Fan Ming asked curiously, "Your Highness Su Fang, what is your heavenly Tao appearance?" After merging with the heavenly Tao, gods would possess a supreme ability, the heavenly law's embodiment technique. In other words, it was imitating the heavenly Tao, materializing one's cultivation and laws, creating things out of thin air, condensing the heavenly Tao Dharma form, and combining it with the Yang spirit to display a supreme divine ability. Everyone cultivated different great Taos. Even if they cultivated the same great Tao, their comprehension of the great Tao was different. Their heavenly Tao avatars were also different. If Su Fang had used his heavenly Tao avatar, Fan Ming would have been defeated even more thoroughly. Su Fang smiled but didn't say anything. Generally speaking, Tao integration stage powerful beings would not easily reveal their heavenly Tao Dharma form. Fan Ming thought that Su Fang was unwilling to tell him, so he quickly changed the topic. Actually, it wasn't that Su Fang didn't want to tell him, but that he still didn't know what his heavenly Tao form was. Generally speaking, when God successfully merged with the heavenly Tao and received the recognition of the heavenly Tao, a projection of the heavenly Tao would appear and naturally condense the heavenly Tao Dharma form. Su Fang used the world in his body as the Tao. Although he successfully merged with the Tao, he didn't condense the heavenly Tao Dharma form. After that, he was knocked unconscious by the supreme beings of the imperial people, who used the Shaoyang divine sun and Shaoyin divine moon. When he woke up, he didn't discover the heavenly Tao Dharma form. It should be because my Tao integration method is different from other gods, so my heavenly Tao Dharma form is different from others, Su Fang speculated. The two of them returned to the Blue Dome 9 realms. The Blue Dome Domain Lord, the Star Billow Realm Lord, and the others were waiting for Su Fang outside the palace. The Divine Lord was also among them. After inviting everyone into the palace, Su Fang asked the Blue Dome Domain Lord, "Domain Lord, do you have something to say? Is it because there aren't enough slots?" Su Fang had obtained more than 700,000 slots, including those obtained by Goddess Luo and Sun Qi. Su Fang only kept 10,000 slots. Other than the slots given to Infinite Life, the Blue Dome Domain Lord, and the others, the rest were given to Jiang Baozhen to auction. At this time, the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce was preparing for the auction. If the Blue Dome Domain Lord needed them, Su Fang could take some of them back. The Blue Dome Domain Lord smiled embarrassedly. "With my wealth, no matter how many slots I get, I won't be able to afford it after entering the Yuan Tiangong. The slots given to me by His Highness Su Fang are enough." Xianlingzi said, "The Domain Lord wants to ask for your help. See if you can rent an area in the territory given to you by the Yuan Tiangong for the people of the Blue Dome Domain to live in." The Blue Dome Domain Lord looked embarrassed. The Star Billow Domain Lord, Master Kuan Su, and the others all looked at Su Fang, their eyes full of anticipation and nervousness. After all, there were only a few people who could enter the Yuan Tiangong. Even if they had more slots, they wouldn't be able to afford it after entering the Yuan Tiangong. In the Hunyuan Heaven Realm, however, there were many gods living there. Although the cultivation environment was not as good as the Yuan Tiangong, it was still an excellent cultivation place that was hard to come by in all the realms. Moreover, the area given to Su Fang by the Yuan Tiangong was the area closest to the entrance of the Yuan Tiangong. It was a place that all the gods would rush to like a flock of ducks. More importantly, after the 6th metamorphosis, the catastrophe would become more and more intense. Living in the Hunyuan Heaven Realm, at least for a short time, they wouldn't have to worry about their safety. Su Fang fell into deep thought. Everyone stared at him without blinking, not even daring to breathe loudly. At this time, Su Fang's words determined the life and death of countless people. Su Fang asked, "How many people do you plan to relocate from the Blue Dome domain?" The Blue Dome domain lord looked at Xianlingzi for help. Xianlingzi said, "Su Fang, what do you plan to do with your territory?" Su Fang said, "I plan to create a god realm there to settle my subordinate. As for other places, I haven't thought about it yet." What the domain lord means is that he wants to buy an area of a small world from you to settle the people of the Blue Dome domain. Of course, he won't take it for free. He will take out resources and treasures to exchange with you. Su Fang raised his eyebrows. A small world? The Blue Dome domain lord thought that Su Fang was reluctant to part with it, so he hurriedly said, "Actually, an area of 10 million miles is enough." Su Fang said with a smile, "The domain lord misunderstood me. The Blue Dome domain is so vast. How can the area of a small world be enough? I plan to take out an area of a big world and give it to the domain lord." An area of a big world. The Blue Dome domain lord was surprised and delighted. The Star Billow domain lord and the others were also surprised. Xianlingzi said, "Su Fang, you only have an area of a big world. If you give it all to the domain lord, how will you settle the Shu clan and your subordinates, as well as your relatives and friends from the big world?" Su Fang touched the tip of his nose and said, "Grandpa, you forgot that I have a Taoist companion. She is also in the top 10. She doesn't need the territory given to her by the Yuan Tiangong, so she naturally gave it to me." Xianlingzi suddenly understood. Ling Xiang smiled charmingly and said, "Kid, not only do you have a heaven-defying cultivation aptitude, even your ability to coax women makes other geniuses feel inferior. There are a total of 2 women ranked in the top 10, and both of them are your Dao companions. Amazing, truly too amazing." Everyone burst into laughter. Su Fang smiled bitterly and helplessly. He had no way to deal with the straightforward Ling Xiang. Then he said, "This big world is not given to the domain lord for free. I have my conditions." The Blue Dome domain lord cupped his fists and said, "Prince Su Fang, please say it." Su Fang said slowly, "In the area of a big world given to the domain lord, Kuan-Su's holy sect must have a small world." Kuan-Su was surprised and delighted. He couldn't wait to kowtow to Su Fang on the spot. When Su Fang was in Kuan-Su's holy sect, Kuan-Su took care of Su Fang, but it was because of Xianlingzi and the 3 divine lords. Because of Su Fang, there was even a gap between him and Xianlingzi. He didn't expect that Su Fang would let bygones be bygones and directly give him a god world. How could he not be surprised and delighted? Su Fang continued, "Also, arrange a slightly larger realm for the Star Billow God realm for the Lord of the Star Billow realm." Now it was the Star Billow Divine Realm's turn. He immediately fell into ecstasy. He cupped his fists and thanked Su Fang. "On behalf of the billions of gods in the Star Billow Divine Realm, I thank Prince Su Fang." In the end, Su Fang said solemnly, "I have one more condition, and that is to ask the domain lord to send experts to oversee the god realm. Moreover, all the experts under your command are responsible for protecting my family, friends, and subordinate." The Blue Dome domain lord agreed without hesitation. Su Fang had given him such a great benefit. How could he not pay the price? Besides, it was not a harsh condition to ask the Blue Dome domain lord to send experts to protect Su Fang's family, friends, and subordinate. What a joke! With Su Fang's current status, who would dare to threaten his family, friends, and subordinates? After sending off the Blue Dome domain lord and the others, Su Fang called young Master Han Shuo and asked him about the Han Shuo divine realm. Then Su Fang said majestically, "Take your people back to the Han Shuo divine realm and select experts. You can also go to other god worlds to do the selection. As long as they are willing to submit to me, Su Fang, I will give them hope to live." At this time, he had gained a firm foothold in the myriad heavens and was beginning to establish his own power. After entering the Yuan Tiangong, he didn't need too many subordinates. However, his father Su Yaotian and many of his friends and subordinates were about to come to the Hunyuan heaven realm. His master Shu Yunkong and many members of the Shu clan were also coming. If he didn't have his own power, how could he enter the Yuan Tiangong and cultivate? Young Master Han Sha hurriedly kowtowed to Su Fang. "Thank you, Your Highness." Su Fang reminded him, "Remember, strength is secondary. The most important thing is to be loyal to me. Don't be like those experts you selected last time. When in danger, all of them only cared about their own survival and forgot about the safety of their master." At the mention of being almost killed by Yin Buji, young Master Han Shua's face flushed red. After everything had settled down, Su Fang once again entered the depths of the palace's array formation and began to cultivate in seclusion. The 70th meridian was about to become the Yang meridian. This time, he planned to succeed in one go. In addition, he was preparing to further stabilize his Dao integration stage. In particular, he wanted to form the Heavenly Dao Avatar. Chapter 22:16. It hadn't been long since Su Fang's 69th Yang meridian was born. Su Fang was about to give birth to a new Yang meridian. This was mainly due to the ascension of the Shaoyang Divine Sunday. Su Fang had absorbed a large amount of pure Yang essence, and the power of Yin and Yang from the fusion of the sun and moon. If not for Su Fang's focus on merging with the heavenly Tao and using all his strength to break through the Yang meridian, the 70th Yang meridian would have been born long ago. In the depths of the palace's array formation, Su Fang continued to adapt to the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace after its transformation, devouring pills and spiritual items. About 5 years later, finally, there was a burst of movement in his body. It came from the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace formed by the 69th Yang meridian. Su Fang was pleasantly surprised. His consciousness entered the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace. He saw that the meridian on the periphery was burning with pure Yang Qi. The Yang Qi in the 69th Yang meridian was surging towards the meridian on the periphery. This is great. The 70th Yang meridian is about to be born. I'm one step closer to the 8th transformation. Another Yang meridian was about to be born. Su Fang was grinning from ear to ear. Su Fang focused all his energy, including the power of Yin and Yang released by the projection of the divine sun and moon above the world tree. The cold aura from the ancient mirror also rushed towards the meridian. As the pure Yang primordial fire burned, not only was the 70th Yang meridian undergoing a shocking transformation, even the damaged Yang meridian was slowly recovering. The cracks on the Yang meridian disappeared as it burned. The entire Heaven and Earth Tao Palace burned wildly. Pure Yang Qi filled the entire Heaven and Earth Tao Palace. All the aura from the World Tree and the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace surged into the 70th Yang meridian. The impact was like a flash flood, causing the Yang meridian to feel like it was about to explode. A beam of pure Yang light exploded from the meridian and swept through the entire Yang meridian. The meridian quieted down and turned into a jade-like Yang meridian. Then, the Yang meridian approached the 69th Yang meridian of its own accord. The Heaven and Earth Tao Palace's Yang meridian became 70th. The 70th Yang meridian was finally born. With an additional Yang meridian, it meant that the Su Fang's Yang energy was even more boundless. The Heaven and Earth Tao Palace would become even more profound, and the inner world would also improve. At the same time, it also meant that his strength would increase by a large margin. However, successfully forming a meridian was only the beginning. He still had to form the Heavenly Tao Avatar. The Heavenly Path Dharma form was a great tool for cultivation after a deity merged with the Heavenly Path. Together with the Yang Spirit, it could unleash supreme divine powers. The Heavenly Tao Dharma form was divided into 2 parts. The first was Heavenly Dharma, which was the fusion of one's great Tao with the Heavenly Tao, and the fusion of one's great Tao with the Tao. The second was to show the great Tao that was recognized by the heavenly Tao. The great Tao was not the great Tao, but the true appearance of the great Tao laws. Su Fang silently chanted the great Tao struggle in his heart, discarding all the selfish and distracting thoughts in his heart. He gradually entered a state of emptiness and selflessness. Then, he sank his essence spirit consciousness into the heaven and earth Tao palace, fusing his entire body with the world in his body. To form the heavenly Tao Dharma form, one had to first forget oneself and fuse with the heavenly Tao. Then, forget the heavenly Tao. After waking up, one would be the heavenly Tao, and the heavenly Tao would be one. The heavenly Tao Dharma form would naturally appear. Unknowingly, 10 years passed. Su Fang seemed to be sitting cross-legged in the array, but his aura was completely gone. His entire body had turned into an empty shell. If an expert tried to sense him, they would not be able to sense his existence at all. 50 years passed. Su Fang's body no longer had a trace of life. He looked like a withered tree or a stone. 100 years passed. Su Fang was still standing tall. 300 years passed. Su Fang's body was covered in a layer of dust. There were even spider webs forming on it. He looked like a lifeless statue. Suddenly Su Fang suddenly opened his eyes. A majestic aura of life and the divine power of the world surged out from his body. Immediately after, a Xian Guang rushed out from the top of his head, quickly condensing into a light shadow. Then, it quickly became clear and real. It was a huge tree that was over 100 feet tall. The tree's trunk and branches were black. They exuded an ancient and weathered aura. However, the leaves were grayish-white. They were somewhat similar to Su Fang's yang energy. Fruits of different colors hung from the branches. The fiery red fruit was like a burning flame. The earth-yellow fruit was heavy and majestic. It was like a suspended mountain. There was also a blood-red fruit. It looked like it was formed from blood. Not only were the fruits of different colors, but they were also of different sizes. Some were the size of a fist, while others were only the size of a walnut. The aura that the fruits exuded was also completely different. The fiery red fruit exuded an astonishing aura of the great Tao of fire. Faint clouds of fire lingered around it. The blood-red fruit exuded a terrifying blood aura. It exuded the divine power of reincarnation. What was even more peculiar was that there was a fruit the size of a washbasin at the top of the tree. Its color was even more strange. Half of it was black, and the other half was white. However, it gave off a feeling of black and white blending. One could see any color in the world from it. The aura that the fruit exuded was also very peculiar. It encompassed everything and could change everything. My heavenly Tao Dharma idol is actually a tree? Su Fang was both shocked and astonished. Looking at the heaven and earth Tao palace in his body, the world tree was still there. The heavenly Tao Dharma idol above his head was not the world tree. After carefully sensing the heavenly Tao Dharma idol, Su Fang finally discovered some clues. His heavenly Tao Dharma idol was actually the manifestation of his own cultivation of the great Tao. The Dharma tree was his Tao, and the fruits on the Dharma tree were the Dharma and techniques that evolved from the supreme great Tao that he cultivated. Su Fang peeled off a strand of yang spirit and merged it with the fiery red fruit on the Dharma tree. Su Fang's yang spirit that merged with the fruit instantly felt as if it had merged with a blazing world of fire. And he was the supreme ruler of this world of fire. QL11 smack. The fruit fell from the Dharma tree. Su Fang's yang spirit moved, and with a boom, flames that carried a supreme heavenly might soared into the sky. They quickly turned into burning clouds of fire and spread out in all directions. A terrifying divine might of the great Tao of fire that could burn heaven and earth swept out. Wherever it swept out, the formation vanished. The palace and everything in it quickly melted. The flames that erupted were not real flames, but a great Tao that could burn and destroy all things. Outside the palace, Fan Ming felt the divine might of the flames. his divine light changed instantly, and he quickly formed a seal. A thick and majestic divine might burst out, enveloping the palace and preventing the divine might of the flames from spreading to other places. The entire palace was turned into nothingness by the divine might of the flames. Even the formation in the inner world of the 9 domains of the Green Dome was burned until it was riddled with holes and shattered layer by layer. This semi-divine artifact of creation had suffered considerable damage. Su Fong hurriedly put away the Dharma tree and merged it into his divine aperture. The yang spirit that had merged with the fruit of the Dharma tree also returned to his body. Fan Ming caught a glimpse of Su Fong's Dharma Laksana and asked in shock, "Your Highness Su Fong, is this your Dharma Laksana of the world? It's so amazing. It's much more powerful than the fire magic that your original body uses." "Don't tell anyone." Su Fong did not explain anything. He just told Fan Ming not to tell anyone else. "Yes, your Highness's strength, I will keep it a secret." Fan Ming nodded and looked at Su Fong with even more awe in his eyes. The Blue Dome Domain Lord and the others rushed over, thinking that Su Fong had been attacked by a strong enemy. They were relieved when they found out that it was Su Fong who had caused such a big commotion. Looking at the burn marks, the Blue Dome Domain Lord was also shocked. He suspected that Su Fong had attracted a heavenly fire. Even the formation in the inner world of the 9 domains of the Green Dome, a semi-divine artifact of creation, had been refined. The Blue Dome Domain Lord chose another palace for Su Fong. Su Fong created a new formation in the depths of the palace and then released the Dharma Laksana of the heavenly path. This time, it was not as laborious as the first time. With a thought, the Dharma Laksana of the heavenly path reappeared from the divine aperture. The fiery red fruit had disappeared without a trace, and a flower bud had formed on the branch where the fruit had been. Su Fong finally understood that each fruit contained one of his great Tao's. Together with the Yang spirit, they could display different divine powers. However, the divine powers displayed by the Yang spirit were different from the ones displayed by the Yang spirit. Although the divine powers displayed by the Yang spirit were similar to the illusory fire cloud, the flames contained not only the 9 suns' divine fire but also the divine power of the heavenly fire. Its power was not as strong as the divine powers displayed by Su Fong, but it could not be sustained for long. There must be other magical uses, but Su Fong had not figured them out yet. The Dharma Laksana of the heavenly path, formed by ordinary gods, could only display one kind of powerful divine powers. This was because other gods could only practice one kind of great Tao. Su Fong practiced the supreme heavenly path, which included all kinds of great Tao. The Dharma Laksana of the heavenly path was naturally different. On Su Fong's tree of Dharma, each fruit contained one kind of great Tao. Just from the number of fruits, it was enough to see the extraordinariness of his Dharma Laksana. Moreover, on Su Fong's tree of Dharma, after each fruit was displayed, it would condense again. It only needed to continuously absorb Su Fong's power and then display it again when fighting with the enemy. The purple fruit contains the heavenly path luck. If it is used on the body, it will have the supreme heavenly path luck and the power to control magic treasures. The blood-red fruit condenses the great Tao of reincarnation of the blue sky underworld. The yellow fruit is naturally the great Tao of earth. With the Dharma Laksana, it is equivalent to having several doppelgangers. They can be displayed individually or together. In this way, my strength will increase by several times or even 10 times,